Chapter 3079. Of course, Ji Shinyu did not touch anything and was still puzzled. Where are my gold leaves? Rongyu Tianlan looked coldly at her, touching herself, and felt very uncomfortable. He gritted his teeth and laughed again. You can't buy me no matter how many gold leaves you have, change it. Ji Shinyu's face was about to spit fire. She felt that this young man was very expensive. However, she did feel an indescribable sense of comfort from him. Her hands trembled as she rummaged through her storage space again. Her little hand was pressed down by him and she widened her eyes in confusion. His palms were burning hot, and his eyes were as deep as a lake. It was as if he wanted to swallow her whole. He lowered his head and licked her ear, causing her to tremble as if she was having a cold. Then he whispered in her ear, "But for you, I can give it to you for free." Ji Shinyu's reaction was slower than half a beat. She looked at him with her mouth slightly open, but he did not want to talk nonsense with her and kissed her deeply. The passionate kiss almost ignited each other, and he did not hold back anymore. His lips, hands, lingered on her body, igniting her everywhere. He was very skilled. Even if she was normal, she would not be able to resist his teasing, let alone when she was under the influence of the aphrodisiac. She gasped for breath. At this time, she could only give in to desire. She straightened her body impatiently and said with a trembling voice, "Hurry. Hurry up." She was a virgin after all, and he was not an ordinary person. Although he had already done all the steps, she was still in pain and cried out softly. But with his deep kiss, her cries were as weak as a whisper. Only her body was trembling. Rongyu Tianlan was also sweating. He was not in pain, he was enduring it. She treated him as a young man. Although he gritted his teeth in hatred, he could not bear to hurt her at this time. Seeing her trembling violently, he stopped and waited for her to get used to it. "Does it hurt?" she said with tears in her eyes. "It hurts." "Get out." She moved her body impatiently. He imprisoned her and kissed her, letting her relax bit by bit until she got used to it. After a hearty, he led her to the top again and again. Rongyu Tianlan looked gentle, elegant, and harmless. He did not seem to care about anything. However, at a time like this, he was still extremely domineering. It could be said that he held the absolute initiative. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow. Sometimes it was like a storm, causing her to be distracted. Sometimes it was like the spring breeze brushing against a willow, causing her to soften into a ball. After all, she was poisoned, so she was extremely sensitive to everything. Furthermore, he was deliberately pleasing her, so it was easy for her to bloom. And as it bloomed again and again, the poison in Ji Shinyu's body was slowly dispelled, and her muddled mind finally regained its clarity. The room was filled with the scent of pleasure. Mixed with the fragrance of the incense burning in the copper cauldron, it formed a strange smell that filled the room. After the last round of pleasure, both of them were drenched in sweat. At this moment, Ji Shinyu's body was extremely sore and weak. She pushed Rongyu Tianlan away, her fingertips moving slightly as she tried to form a seal, wanting to use the cleansing incantation on herself. But after a few rounds of passion, she was extremely weak, and her hand seals were all jumbled up, unable to achieve the desired effect. Ji Shinyu was still not satisfied, and continued to cast the spell. Rongyu Tianlan watched quietly for a moment, and his heart trembled as he held her wrist. "Let me do it." Ji Shinyu thought that he would also use a cleansing incantation, but she did not expect him to use a normal method. Chapter 3080. He took out a snow-white handkerchief from somewhere and wiped her gently. As the soft handkerchief slid across her skin, Ji Shinyu blushed and raised her hand to stop him. "I'll do it myself." Rongyu Tianlan held the hand that she wanted to stop, while the other hand continued to wipe her. A man who was satisfied always had a good temper, so at this moment, the smile in Rongyu Tianlan's eyes was like a spring breeze brushing past. Shinyu, I like to personally serve you. Ji Xinyue couldn't stop him. She closed her eyes and said in a hoarse voice, thank you. Rongyu Tianlan's fingers froze and he looked down at her. Thank me. He seemed to have thought of something and his beautiful eyes narrowed. Thank me for using this method to detoxify you. Thank me for sacrificing myself. Or. His voice was a little hoarse after pleasure, like a feather tickling one's senses. He leaned closer to her and whispered the last sentence in her ear. This sentence was a little poisonous and even frivolous. Or thank me for my skills, which are much better than those boys. You. Ji Xinyue's little face was flushed red before another layer of red surged up. She gritted her teeth and glared at him. She didn't know what to feel. When she was awake and saw that he was the one who had done it with her, she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. But at the same time, she thought of the voice transmission talisman. Then, she thought about how he had probably just climbed out of Yunqi's bed. She felt an indescribable sense of suffocation. If she had been awake, she might not have let him touch her. She would rather give her first time to a boy than let him take responsibility for it and be entangled between him and Yunqi, but she had woken up too late. What was done could not be undone. They had already had a few rounds of pleasure. The feelings in her heart were indescribable. Her head was buzzing. She took a deep breath and said hoarsely, Rongyu Tianlan, what do you plan to do? Rongyu Tianlan already knew what she was feeling uncomfortable about, but he didn't want to expose her mischievously. Who asked her to find a boy? He touched his nose and pretended to be confused. What do you mean? His eyes rippled like water. You want me to take responsibility, don't you? Don't worry, I will take responsibility. Xinyu, you are now mine. I will send someone to Nantian Palace to propose marriage. She knew it. He would take responsibility for this. But she didn't want this kind of responsibility. Ji Xinyu took another breath. Rongyu Tianlan, this matter was an accident. I don't need you to take responsibility. You don't need to force yourself to marry me because of this. What if I say that I won't force you? Rongyu Tian looked at her. Ji Xinyu gritted her teeth. If you don't force me, then I will. I don't want to marry you. She suddenly paused and grabbed his hand. What are you doing? There was a small medicine bottle in Rongyu Yishanlan's hand, and there was a green liquid in the medicine bottle. He had just touched a little of that liquid and was about to rub it on a certain part of her body. Her small palm was wet with sweat. Rongyu Tian flipped his wrist and freed his hand from her small hand. He had an innocent look on his face as he said, I'm applying medicine for you. Actually, I was already careful enough, but you were still injured. This medicine is extraordinarily good at healing wounds. Applying it on you will make you feel very comfortable. Chapter 3081. Ji Xinyue's face was so red that it was about to be filled with blood. She held his hand tightly and refused to let go. I'll do it myself. Okay. Rongyu Yishanlan handed the bottle to her with a faint smile, then looked at her with bright eyes. You can start now. Let him stay here and watch her smear it on herself. Ji Xinyue wanted to kick him off the bed. But her legs were sore the moment she moved, especially a certain part of her body, which was extremely painful and numb. Her whole body felt like it had lost all its strength. You go out first. Ji Xinyue was almost burning under his direct gaze. Xinyue, we're already in this kind of relationship, why are you still shy? Rongyu Yishanlan leaned close to her ear and took the bottle back. Be good and let me apply it for you. I guarantee that you'll recover at the fastest speed. As he spoke, he had already begun to apply the medicine for her. Ji Xinyue couldn't stop him for a moment. She wanted to find a hole to hide in, so she simply closed her eyes and covered her ears. Rongyu Ishinlan's hands were light and fast. After applying the ointment, she felt cool, and the painful and sore feeling was finally reduced by half. After Rongyu Ishinlan cleaned her up, he started to clean himself up. A cleaning spell was done. He could still use this cleaning spell on both of them. Even Ji Xinyue was as clean as if she had just taken a shower. Then he took her into his arms and the two of them lay under the blanket together. He wrapped one arm around her and locked her in the crook of his arm, while his other hand began to wander around her body, again. Ji Xinyue was shocked and hurriedly held his hand. No! Rongyu Ishinlan obediently let her hold his hand and raised his eyebrows at her. No. My massage technique is very good. It can quickly relieve your fatigue and restore you to normal. Are you sure you don't need me to massage you? Ji Xinyue was speechless. So he wanted to massage her. After all, she had been poisoned by an extremely strong aphrodisiac. Although the aphrodisiac was detoxified, its effects were still there. She had just woken up and was facing him who didn't play by the rules, so her mind was still in a mess. She wasn't really awake and her reactions were slow. Rong Yuetian looked at her pair of round eyes and felt an indescribable joy. She looked at her with a smile and said, "How is it? Do you want me to massage you?" Ji Xinyu bit her lips. Her lips had already been bitten by the flames of lust burning in her body, and now that she bit down on the original wound, she immediately felt a burning pain. "Idiot, although I like you here, this is your own meat. Why are you biting it so hard?" Rongyu Tianlan placed a finger on her red lips and applied a special ointment on her lips. He spoke with a smile, and his every move was filled with overbearing love and care. While Ji Xinyu was in a daze, he had already finished applying the ointment. Once again, he hugged her in satisfaction and used his other hand to massage her. "Xinyu, look, aren't I omnipotent? There will be many benefits if you marry me. A husband like me is hard to find." Husband. These two words seemed to stab Ji Xinyu. Her heart felt as if it was drowning, and she abruptly took a step back, avoiding his hand. She blurted out, "You're quite skilled at this. Do you say this to every woman you've had sex with?" Chapter 3082. Rongyue Tianlan's fingertips paused. As he continued to massage her, he slowly said, "I'm good at this because I'm a doctor. As for the other women, you're the only one I've ever had sex with. I'm a picky eater. I'm only interested in women I really like and want to marry." Liar. You and Yunqi, you just rushed over from Yunqi's place. I know you've spent a lot of time with her, so it's normal for you to have deep feelings for her. I don't want to come between the two of you. Rongyue Tianlan, I know men can have 3 wives and 4 concubines. You can marry her or me, but I can't accept it. So you want to quit? You don't want me even if you have this relationship with me? You're giving up on me so easily. Ji Xinyu opened her mouth slightly. Why did he sound like a pitiful woman who was about to be abandoned? Rongyue Tianlan gently caressed her mouth. You want to eat me, so you don't want to admit it. Xinyu, you can't be so irresponsible. Actually, a man's chastity is very precious. Ji Xinyu clenched her fists. But you lost your chastity long ago. How is it long ago? It wasn't there just now, so I threw it on you. Rongyue Tianlan said righteously. This person was too thick-skinned. He had just crawled out of Yunqi's bed. Rongyue Tianlan, don't think I don't know. You can't hide this from me. You and Yunqi have already. Rongyue Tianlan suddenly leaned close to her and pressed his forehead against hers. Are you jealous? His breath was too close to hers. Ji Xinyue panicked and felt sour. She pushed him away. I just don't want to share a husband with someone else. Coincidentally, Yunxi is also a proud lady. She also doesn't want to share a husband with someone else. And I don't want to marry two women. It's good to only love one woman. It's tiring to have more. Then you mean. Ji Xinyue suddenly seemed to understand something. So you abandoned her and chose me. Rongyue Tianlan face-bombed. He almost wanted to spank her. This girl was sometimes so smart that it was amazing. Sometimes she was so dull that it made him want to punish her. Ji Xinyue, Yunxi is just a friend of mine. She and I are just friends. We don't have any romantic feelings for each other. That's why I didn't abandon her. If I had feelings for her in that way, I would never have come to pester you. Do you really think I'm a playboy? Ji Xinyue, I see that your misunderstanding of me is really deep. It's a pity that I've kept my chastity for thousands of years. Now that I've failed, I've lost my chastity to you. You're still trying to push me away and misunderstand me so much. What's even worse is that when you were poisoned, the first person you looked for wasn't me, but a waiter. Don't tell me that in your eyes, I can't even compare to a small prostitute. When she said the last sentence, the resentment in Rongyue Tianlan's eyes reached its peak, and she stared at her accusingly. Ji Xinyue stared at him, dumbstruck, her head buzzing, unable to react for a moment. Rongyue Tian took the opportunity to kiss her little mouth. Are you silly? Ji Xinyue had just woken up, so her mind wasn't very clear to begin with. With the bomb thrown out by him, she was completely stunned. Fake. Were his interactions with Yunxi fake? But why would such a personal voice transmission talisman be with Yunxi in the middle of the night? Yunxi also said that he was resting. Rongyue Tianlan saw her expression and knew what she was worried about. He tapped his forehead and decided not to tease her anymore. If he continued teasing her, his wife might become anxious. Chapter 3083. Without waiting for her to ask, he started to explain. There was a moment of silence in the room. Rongyue Tianlan's explanation was only a few words, but it stirred up a storm in Ji Xinyue's heart. She was stunned for a moment. So that's what happened. So Yunxi was just his friend. It seemed that Xie Zhuk and Huang Luqing had added something to the images they showed her. Wait. Xie Zhuk. Huang Luqing. Ji Xinyue suddenly jumped up. Oh no. She jumped out of Rongyue Tianlan's arms, which gave Rongyue Tianlan a fright. What's wrong? Ji Xinyue's palms were covered in cold sweat. She quickly looked outside. The thick curtains in the room blocked most of the sunlight, and only a faint white light penetrated in. Obviously, it was daybreak. What time was it now? Had the great array already started? There was no hourglass in the room. She was anxious and raised her hand to pull the curtains, wanting to open them to see the sun outside. Rongyue Tian reacted quickly and grabbed her hand. Idiot, what's going on? Are you still thinking about letting the people outside feast their eyes on you? Ji Xinyue. She looked down and felt like her whole body was burning. She was indeed naked. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her with a smile and added fearlessly, although you look very good like this, I'm selfish. I still want to keep my wife's body to myself. Ji Xinyue didn't know whether to cover her body or his eyes. If it was in the past, she would have kicked this sharp-tongued guy out of the window. However, she didn't have time to bicker with him now. She hurriedly looked for her clothes. Rongyue Tianlan saw her flustered appearance and his heart skipped a beat. He raised his hand and took out a dress from his storage space and placed it in front of her. Wear this. It was a lake-colored dress, elegant and luxurious. It even seemed to be sparkling in her hands, and it felt exceptionally good to the touch. Ji Xinhua liked this color and style, but she didn't have time to appreciate it carefully. She didn't even have time to look at the composition of the fabric. She raised her hand and put the dress on, then pulled open the curtains. The sun outside had already risen above the horizon. Based on the height of the sun, Ji Xinyu quickly estimated the time, around 5:15. She heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it was not too late. The array had not started yet. In fact, the array was easy to break. As long as the people in the array knew the true function of the array, they would naturally rebel. Even if he couldn't defeat Huang Luqing and the others, he would no longer listen to them and be a chess piece in the array. The only obstacle was the enchantment of the Purple Cloud sect. As long as that enchantment was broken, everything would be easy. At that time, she couldn't do anything about that barrier, but now there was Rong Yishanlin, an expert in breaking barriers. Here, she immediately turned to look at Rong Yue Tianlan. Your Highness Rong Yue, you're best at breaking barriers, right? Do me a favor. The sun was warm. Rong Yue Tian sat on the bed and meditated with his eyes closed. There was a faint blue light flickering around his body. He sat in the blue light like a Buddha. Ji Xinyu sat uneasily in front of the table, staring at him as she ate a fruit on the table. She had just spoken very quickly and concisely about what had happened in the Purple Clouds sect last night. Chapter 3084. The more Rong Yue Tianlan listened, the tighter his brows became. After listening to her, he was silent for a moment, then took out 2 pastries for her to eat to replenish her strength. He took 2 pills in succession and then said, "Don't be afraid, I'll take care of everything. I guarantee that your friends will be fine. There's still time, give me an hour to recover." After saying that, he immediately sat cross-legged on the bed and entered a meditative state. Ji Xinhua didn't know what kind of medicine he had swallowed, but she could guess that it was probably a medicine that could quickly restore psychokinesis. She didn't know if there were any side effects. She didn't know what kind of fruit Rong Yue Tianlan gave her was. Not only did it taste excellent, it also had the effect of quickly restoring physical strength. Her body was originally sore and weak, but after eating the fruit, all her fatigue was swept away. She didn't dare to disturb him, so she sat by his side and looked at him. Her heart was strangely calm. He was here for her. It was a simple sentence, but it made her heart feel warm, and even her nose felt a little sour. What happened last night was no less than the collapse of heaven and earth to her. Her most trusted master was a member of the demonic sect, and even plotted against her. Her most beloved junior brother turned out to be the reincarnation of the demonic master. The lives of those senior and junior brothers were in danger, but she was drugged with an aphrodisiac, and there was no way out. At that moment, she felt that she was abandoned by the whole world, and fell into hell, unable to climb out. But he came, not only to cure her of the poison, but also to help her save her senior and junior brothers. It felt good to have someone to rely on. Ji Xinhua took a light breath, closed her eyes slightly, and silently adjusted her breath. Although she was burning with anxiety, she couldn't be anxious at this time. Rong Yue Tianlan must have used the telekinesis teleportation technique in order to come and save her in time. He had to recover before he could go to Ziyun's sect to save people. Ji Xinhua was actually very rational, so she waited for him silently, and definitely wouldn't rush him. Rong Yue Tianlan had a strong sense of time, and after an hour, he opened his eyes. Ji Xinhua immediately jumped up. "How is it? Can we go now?" Rong Yue Tianlan looked at her big bright eyes. She looked a little nervous. She was obviously very anxious, but she was forcing herself to be calm. He raised his hand and brushed the hair on her forehead. "Are you waiting here, or are you coming with me?" Ji Xinyu immediately said, "Of course we'll go together." Roan Yuetian didn't beat around the bush and held her hand. All right, then we'll go together. On the way, we'll discuss the plan. Master. Just as Ji Shinyu opened the door, the moon god's sword rushed in, almost stabbing into Ji Shinyu's body. Ji Shinyu was furious when she saw it and slapped it away. Since you ran away, why did you come back? This fellow had run away when she was being plotted against. Now that she was out of danger, it came back. Master, I went to get reinforcements, I didn't run. The divine sword's voice rang in Ji Shinyu's mind. Ji Shinyu. Where did you go to get reinforcements? The tip of the moon god's sword immediately pointed at Roan Yuetian. Go to him. Ji Shinyu. The moon god's sword felt wronged. This divine sword rushed to his place as fast as possible, but in the end, I couldn't break his barrier. This divine sword tried its best to knock him out, but instead of knocking him out, I knocked out his friend. I forced myself to draw words in front of her to communicate with her, and only then did I know that he had come out to look for you. Then, I rushed to Ziyun's sect without stopping, and saw that something had happened to Ziyun's sect. Chapter 3085. Ji Shinyu's heart sank. What happened there? The residents of the disciples of the Purple Clouds sect and the guest department are completely covered by the barrier. I searched all the places where I could find you, but I couldn't find you. Unfortunately, I couldn't enter the place with the barrier. In a hurry, I attacked the barrier, and as a result, I attracted two people to chase me. Ji Shinyu heaved a sigh of relief. This was the same situation as what she had encountered last night, which meant that there were no other changes. Ji Shinyu also told Roan Yuetian what the moon god's sword had said, but Roan Yuetian frowned slightly. He asked the moon god's sword a few more questions in succession. He asked in detail, even asking about the moves the moon god's sword had used to attack the barrier. After asking everything, his brows were tightly knitted. Ji Shinyu kept looking at his expression, and seeing him like this, her heart sank again. What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Roan Yuetian looked at her pale little face, took a light breath, and said, that barrier, I'm afraid there's a big problem. What big problem? Ji Shinyu's heart also rose. Roan Yuetian didn't want to scare her, but he also didn't want her to be caught off guard when the barrier had a problem. When that happened, the impact on her would be even greater. He pondered for a moment and said, that barrier is most likely the blood ghost swallowing barrier. This barrier is an ancient taboo barrier, set up by combining a soul of the person who set up the barrier with thousands of resentful spirits. The living beings enveloped by this barrier will lose their minds and completely obey the orders of the person who set up the barrier. Ji Shinyu's heart rose higher and higher. Then, what if the barrier is broken? Will they be back to normal? Roan Yuetian shook his head slightly. There must be an antidote. Then, do you have the antidote? Roan Yuetian shook his head slightly. This barrier has disappeared for 10,000 years. I've only heard of it, but have never seen it officially. Naturally, I can't make an antidote. He had heard of this array from Shinjiuli. Shinjiuli had encountered this array in the past, so he knew the specific situation of this array. He had always been interested in array formations. Hence, when Shinjiuli casually mentioned it while they were playing chess, he asked for more details. Shinjiuli didn't hide anything from him in this aspect, and concisely explained the characteristics and dangers of this array. Of course, Shinjiuli wasn't one to lose out. While explaining, he took the opportunity to give him a few rare fruits to eat. At that time, Roan Yuetian had a good memory. When he heard Ji Shinyu's words, when he had heard the moon god sword's words, he was already a little bit. When he heard the moon god swords, and compared all the characteristics, he was. Then is it useless to break that barrier? Ji Shinyu's voice trembled slightly. Since last night, she had been wallowing in despair, hopelessness, and hopelessness. No matter how good her mentality was, she couldn't bear it. Rong Yuetian held her hand and said, "Don't be afraid. It's not completely useless. It's not that this poison can't be cured, but it will take some effort. I have to find someone. Yes, don't worry, as long as that person comes, it will be easy to cure this poison. Now, our first task is to prevent them from activating that array. We have to protect their lives first." Ji Xinyue also knew that it was useless to be anxious at this time. She suppressed the panic in her heart. Then what should we do? Kill Xie Juk before the array is activated. First, he had to eliminate the source. Chapter 3086. Kill Xie Juk before the formation starts. Destroy him first. Rongyu Ishanlan's voice was filled with killing intent. Ji Xinyue paused for a moment and blurted out, "Do we only kill his physical body or destroy his soul?" Rongyu Ishanlan glanced at her. "If we want to eliminate all future troubles, it's better to completely destroy his soul to prevent him from making a comeback. Then, after killing him, can we separate his main soul?" Xie Juk's main soul was Xie Fenglu. That child had really been devoted to her, and in the end, he had been devoured by Xie Juk. Rongyu Ishanlan tightened her grip on the bamboo flute. After saying this, Ji Xinyue regretted it. At such a critical moment, it was really too much to ask Rongyu Ishanlan to separate the main soul. She knew that Xie Juk's martial arts had not fully recovered, and his cultivation was about the same as hers. It would not be too difficult for Rongyu Ishanlan to kill him. However, Huang Luqing was a formidable opponent, and her master. These two people were the guardian elders of the demon world tens of thousands of years ago. At that time, it was already difficult for tens of thousands of people to defeat them. Now that tens of thousands of years had passed, it was hard to imagine how profound their martial arts were. However, they usually hid their true martial arts to deceive others. If Rongyu Ishanlan wanted to kill Xie Juk, Huang Luqing and Sect Master Ziyun would definitely stop her. Although Rongyu Ishanlan was an immortal, it would be extremely difficult for her to deal with these two people. However, time was very tight, and she could not even find other reinforcements. It was too late to call for reinforcements at the last minute. What should she do? What should she do? She originally thought that as long as Rongyu Ishanlan broke the barrier and informed the people inside, there would be room for negotiation. Now, it seemed that it was not an ordinary problem. Not only would they not be able to save him, but they would also lose Rongyu Ishanlan and her lives. At this time, even if she and Rongyu Ishanlan used all their strength, they might not succeed. It would be too much for her to ask for anything else. Therefore, Ji Xinyu regretted her words the moment she said them. She hurriedly added, "You don't have to do it on purpose. It's better to break this formation and not let their scheme succeed." Rongyu Ishanlan pulled her into his arms and rested his chin on the top of her head. He closed his eyes slightly and said, "Well, okay, let's focus on the overall situation." He paused for a moment, as if he didn't have the heart to say it, but he had no choice but to say it. "Xinyu, among your senior brothers, which one of them cultivates earth elemental techniques?" "It's fifth senior brother." "What's wrong?" "Xinyu, the 5 elements formation restored by the Devil Master must have all 5 elements, and the leader of the 5 elements must cultivate to the level of a divine monarch. Without one, the effectiveness of the formation would be greatly reduced, especially for earth-type spells. Earth was the core, and without it, the formation would not be of much use. According to what I know, among your senior brothers and junior nephews, only your senior brother has cultivated to the level of a divine lord. If we really have no other choice, we will have to kill your 5th senior brother to protect the others. Do you agree?" Ji Xinyu's hands and feet were cold, and she stared at him with wide eyes. It was too cruel for her to make such a decision, but this was a cruel matter in the first place. Sometimes, it was necessary to sacrifice the rook to save the king. At the crucial moment, she still had her own opinions and was decisive. She nodded slightly and said, "Okay." This word seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. Chapter 3087. Rongyue Tianlan held her hand and said, "Don't be afraid. Even if you want to kill your fifth senior brother, you will only kill his physical body, and his soul will not be harmed. I have a friend who knows how to summon souls and gather bodies. After this, I will find my friend and ask him to revive your fifth senior brother. At most, he will sleep for a year. After a year, he will be your good senior brother again. How about that?" This time, Ji Xinyu's expression finally looked better. She let out a long sigh of relief and nodded vigorously. "Okay." Her tone was much lighter. Rongyue Tianlan could not help but laugh. He kissed her sparkling eyes and said, "Then it's settled." He then told Ji Xinyu about his plan. This plan was a little risky, but it was also the most likely way to succeed. Ji Xinyu nodded. "There's no time to lose. Let's split up." According to the plan they had discussed on the way, Rongyue Tianlan appeared first and went to find Sect Master Ziyun as an ignorant person. Because Sect Master Ziyun was busy preparing for the opening of the Great Array, his first reaction when he heard his disciple's report was to not meet him. He asked his disciple to pass on a message that it was not convenient for Ziyun's sect at the moment and asked Rongyue Tianlan to come again another day. Rongyue Tianlan naturally would not choose another day to go. He used the excuse of wanting to see Ji Xinyu and directly barged into Ziyun's sect. At such a critical moment, Sect Master Ziyun did not want to cause more trouble. Ji Xinyu had already escaped. If he told Rongyue Tianlan that Ji Xinyu had already left, Rongyue Tianlan might not believe him and search around Ziyun's sect. It would be very easy for him to discover the enchantment in his disciple's courtyard. At that time, it would be another trouble. Therefore, Sect Master Ziyun wanted to minimize the trouble. He made up his mind to transform into Ji Xinyu to meet Rongyue Tianlan. His plan was very good. If he could fool Rongyue Tianlan, he would do so. If that did not work, he could still catch him off guard and plot against him. Sect Master Ziyun's scheming mind was deep, but the person he met was Rongyue Yishanlin, who had the same idea. Sect Master Ziyun's martial arts were indeed strong, even stronger than Rongyue Tianlan's. However, Rongyue Tianlan knew many tricks. More importantly, Rongyue Tianlan was good at poison and setting up arrays. Grandmaster Ziyun was inadvertently poisoned by Rongyue Tian, and then he was thrown into a maze by Rongyue Tian. He couldn't get out for a while. Of course, the commotion caused by Rongyue Tianlan also alarmed Huang Luqing. Huang Luqing had always regarded Rongyue Tianlan as a formidable opponent. When she saw his arrival, she naturally waited for him. Before Rongyue Tianlan came near the enchantment, he was intercepted by her. The two of them had a disagreement and fought. This time, Huang Luqing naturally didn't hold back anymore, and she used everything she'd learned in her lifetime. He was shark men, who had been cultivating for tens of thousands of years. Before Rongyue Tian was born, he had already cultivated to the level of a mighty immortal. Now, his kung fu was close to that of a great deity. He was only one thunder tribulation away from that. Originally, Rongyue Tian wasn't his opponent, but after all, he had separated a part of his soul last night and condensed more than 10,000 malicious ghosts to set up the array. His power had been greatly reduced, and he only had half of his previous power left. In addition, Rongyue Tian was full of tricks in the fight. All kinds of kung fu that he had never seen or heard of emerged endlessly. At the beginning of the fight, Huang Luqing was slightly at a disadvantage. However, he wasn't in a hurry, because once the Devil Lord's recovery array was officially activated, the enchantments supported by his soul would no longer need to be used. At that time, his soul would return, and his kung fu would increase greatly. Rong Yuetian wouldn't be his opponent. He could also take the opportunity to get rid of this person. It could be considered as getting rid of a formidable opponent for the Devil Lord in advance. Chapter 3088. The two of them fought fiercely. Huang Luqing was afraid that the shockwaves from their fight would affect the barrier, so he tried to lure Rongyue Tianlan elsewhere, away from the barrier. The barrier was extremely sturdy and could not be opened without the power of an immortal. The only person Huang Luqing was worried about was Rongyue Tianlan. As long as he lured Rongyue Tianlan away, even if the others came, they would be helpless against the barrier. Moreover, Xie Zhuk was still near the barrier. Once the array in the barrier was set up, the barrier would automatically disappear. Xie Zhuk would enter and use a special method to absorb the flesh and blood of the people in the array, completely returning to normal. Before this, if someone tried to break into the array, Xie Zhuk would be able to deal with them. Huang Liuqing's plan was very good, but he forgot about Ji Xinyue, or perhaps he thought that he had already dealt with Ji Xinyue. Not only could the aphrodisiac poison he gave Ji Xinyue be removed by intercourse with a man, but if an ordinary man helped her remove it, her martial arts would be crippled, and she would become a complete cripple. Naturally, she would not be able to do anything. He was worried last night, so he secretly followed Ji Xinyue for a short period of time. Seeing that she went around looking for medical treatment to no avail and directly broke into the small attic, he was relieved and returned. At that time, his heart was completely at ease. He did not believe that the Devil Master would still be obsessed with a woman who had no martial arts and had been defiled by a boy. Of course, even if the Devil Master did not let go of Ji Xinyue because of Xie Fengliu's soul, she would no longer pose any threat to Xie Zhuk. His plan could be said to be flawless, but he forgot a sentence: the heavenly Tao is unpredictable, and he also forgot a sentence: the plan is not as fast as the changes. Ji Xinyue, who he thought had become a cripple, had quietly appeared in the Purple Cloud sect while he and Rongyue Tianlan were fighting in full swing. As soon as she appeared, she immediately tried to break the barrier. However, her skills were obviously not enough. The azure saber in her hand danced like the wind, but she did not manage to cut open the barrier at all. The more she could not cut it open, the more anxious she became. Her palm was bleeding from the recoil of the saber hilt. She did not know if it was because of pain or anxiety, but tears streamed down her face. Don't waste your energy. You can't open it. Even if you do, the people inside won't listen to you. Xie Zhuk finally couldn't help but walk out from the shadows. Let them go. Ji Xinyue's eyes were bloodshot as she pointed the tip of her blade at Xie Zhuk. In just one night, she had become extremely haggard. Her face was pale, her eyes were red and swollen, and even her lips had turned pale. Xie Zhuk's eyes darkened. He paused for a moment before saying, "Xinyu, the demon world has been planning for so long. It's impossible for them to stop. Little Nine, they are also your senior brothers. Back then, they treated you pretty well. Back then, how harmonious were our senior brothers. Do you have the heart to use their lives in exchange for your own power? You clearly could have cultivated for a few hundred years." Ji Xinyu still didn't want to give up on psychological warfare. Xie Zhuk let out a short laugh as he looked at Ji Xinyue with his ink-black eyes. Then, he shook his head slightly. "I won't be able to cultivate back." He sighed softly. "If I had revived normally, I would have been able to cultivate for a few thousand years and return to my previous state. However, my soul back then was too fragmented. It was originally a dead end where I could not return at all. In the end, Huang Luqing used a special spell to forcefully absorb my soul back together. Therefore, I could only use this method to recover after my revival. Otherwise, I would never be able to recover. Chapter 3089. Actually, even if you don't recover, your cultivation is not low. Why must you recover? Ji Xinyue gripped the hilt of her saber tightly. You don't understand. Xie Juk smiled bitterly and shook his head. He was the Devil Master, and the news of his resurrection would spread very quickly. Once it spread, the people of the celestial world would come in waves to eliminate the demons. If he continued to be like this, he would only be waiting for death. Even if the people of the celestial world did not come to find trouble with him, he was not willing to be mediocre. He was even more unwilling to be protected by sect master Zi Yun and Huang Liuqing's wings. He was the devil master of the devil world. What he wanted was to dominate a region, not hide somewhere and be a mediocre person. He had Xie Fengliu's memories and even his obsession, but his personality and nature were completely different from Xie Fengliu's, and his ambitions were also different. Xinyue, as long as I recover all my martial arts, I will be the overlord of this world. At that time, whether it is your father or the other 3 emperors, they will all have to bow down to me. If you follow me, you will be second only to one person and above millions of people. Those who want to do great things should not be bothered by trifles. Your senior brothers sacrificed themselves for this seat is also their blessing. If you follow me obediently, I can promise you to keep their souls and let them be this seat's ghost servants. If you continue to be stubborn, not only will I devour their flesh and blood, but I will also devour their souls. I will not let your father off either. He narrowed his eyes and moved closer to Ji Xinyue, then smiled. Xinyue, their future is in your hands. What are you going to do? Ji Xinyue's face flushed red. She took a step back and suddenly sneered. Xie Juk, you gave me such a powerful aphrodisiac last night. Aren't you curious how I removed it? Xie Juk was stunned, and his expression changed. Aphrodisiac? Why would I need an aphrodisiac if I wanted to do you? He seemed to have suddenly understood something, and his fingers clenched. Huang Liuqing. This bastard. He looked at Ji Xinyue from top to bottom, and his expression became unsightly. His aphrodisiac can only be removed by intercourse between a man and a woman. He didn't know how many women he had had in his life, so it was easy for him to distinguish between virgins and virgins. He had been speaking to Ji Xinyue in an amiable manner just now, trying to convince her, but now his face was ashen, as if he was a hot-blooded man who realized he had been cuckolded, and was extremely angry. His fingers slowly clenched by his side. You lost your virginity. Who did you lose your virginity to? When he was angry, his aura was unusually strong, and the surrounding air seemed to be frozen by his low pressure. Ji Xinyue sneered, it's none of your business. Xie Juk narrowed his eyes and slowly said, Xinyue, are you afraid of death? Ji Xinyue also clenched the Azura blade in her hand and looked at him warily. What do you want to do? Xinyue, that soul of mine likes you very much. For you, he didn't hesitate to give up his life. You should keep yourself pure for him. Xie Juk's voice was as cold as ice. So? Ji Xinyue raised her eyebrows. So you should die. Xie Juk slowly pulled out his sword, and his ink-black eyes seemed to be surging with ice. Xinyue, give up on your dirty body. I will create another one for you. Ji Xinyue raised her eyebrows. Create another one. Yes, Xinyue. I like you, so I naturally can't bear to see you truly die. Chapter 3090. Yes, Xinyue, I like you, so I naturally can't bear to see you truly die. I will let your soul reincarnate into a good body. Don't worry, it will only take a few hundred years for you to grow into a beautiful woman again. even your appearance won't change. At that time, it will be the same if you marry me. I will wait for you. Ji Shinyu was speechless. She raised her head and laughed. Ha, you're really wishful thinking. Xia, you keep saying that you like me, but I was tricked into this state by your subordinates. Instead of taking revenge for me, you want to kill me. Is this how you love someone? Xia was speechless. I will naturally punish him to fight for justice for you, but... Shinyu, I can't tolerate a woman being unchaste, so... Ji Shinyu laughed out loud this time. I'm unchaste. Xia, tell me yourself, how innocent are you? As far as I know, you had many concubines tens of thousands of years ago, right? Men and women are different. Women should be faithful to one person, but it's normal for men to have 3 wives and 4 concubines. He saw the slightly mocking smile on Ji Shinyu's lips and felt uncomfortable. He added, as compensation, after I marry you in the future, I can make you my empress. No one can surpass you. Ji Shinyu's answer was to stab him. Dream on. Her stab was filled with anger, and its power was astonishing. Xia handsome face darkened. That's not up to you. The 2 of them were locked in a fight here. After fighting for about half a cup of tea's time, Ji Shinyu's martial arts were clearly inferior to Xia, probably because she was exhausted last night. She gradually showed signs of losing. Perhaps she felt that there was no benefit in continuing the fight, so she found a flaw and faked a stab, rushing into the sky above the barrier. Xia already had the intention to kill her, so how could he let her go? Moreover, she didn't leave the vicinity of the barrier, so he naturally chased after her. The 2 of them ran like lightning above the barrier. Ji Shinyu was chased by him to the point that she did not know where to go. She ran around in the air above the barrier, going east, west, south, and north. She did not know where she learned a set of movement techniques, but she would often escape from Xia sword in the nick of time. Xia was already extremely angry because of Ji Shinyu's loss of chastity. Now that she had escaped again and again, he was even angrier. He had a fiery temper to begin with, and after a few incidents like this, his anger was about to burst his chest. He steeled his heart and raised his speed to the maximum. The palm sword turned into a black beam of light and pierced towards Ji Shinyu's back. At this moment, Ji Shinyu had already run to the center of the barrier. Hearing the fierce wind behind her, she suddenly stopped and turned around. Pooh! With a bang, blood splattered everywhere. Xia's sword had pierced through her chest and came out of her back. Her body suddenly swayed, and with a hoarse cry, she fell down, although Xia was determined to kill her. After seeing her get hit by the sword, his heart suddenly ached. He leaped up and caught her in the air. He hugged her, who was covered in blood, in his arms. Shinyu. Just now, he had stabbed out with his sword in extreme anger. This sword contained the demonic energy of the Devil Master. If it stabbed an ordinary immortal, it would instantly cause their soul to dissipate. Even if it stabbed a divine lord like Ji Shinyu, even if their soul did not dissipate, their physical body would definitely die, and even their soul would be severely injured. Chapter 3091. He only wanted to kill her physical body, but he did not want to hurt her soul. Therefore, the moment the sword hit her, his face turned pale. His sword had clearly hit her vital point, and blood gushed out from her wound. When Xia held her in his arms, his robe was stained with blood. When the blood touched his hand, he felt as if he was burned. He looked down at her. Her face was terrifyingly pale. Her eyelashes were slightly closed, and her lips opened a few times as if she wanted to say something. However, she was already close to death, and she could not speak. Juk's fingers trembled slightly. He subconsciously used his hand to cover the wound on her chest and whispered into her ear, "Shinyu, what did you say?" At the same time, he used his psychic power to check how injured her soul was. As soon as he did so, his expression changed drastically. Her soul was so weak that it was almost undetectable. While he was in a daze, there was a sudden gust of wind behind him. He was distracted. By the time he realized that something was wrong and wanted to dodge, it was already too late. "Young master, be careful." A loud shout accompanied by an even stronger gust of wind rushed over. Clang! Bang! Pft! 3 strange sounds rang out one after another, making it impossible for anyone to react. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. Bang! Someone was sent flying by the huge force of the collision. As for the pft sound, it was because the sneak attack from behind was too fast and too close. Although the flying sword was deflected, it was only deflected. The sword that was originally heading for Juk's back directly pierced his ribs. Juk's body stiffened. He subconsciously turned around to see what was going on. Ji Xinyue, who was in his arms, suddenly exploded. She raised her hand and stabbed at his heart. At this moment, a series of shocking changes happened. Even someone as smart as Juk could not react in time. The knife was about to stab him through the heart. He hurriedly threw her out. His movements could not be said to be slow, but the distance this time was too close. Although he had thrown her out, the knife still stabbed into his chest, almost piercing through his heart. Juk staggered 2 steps back. Blood flowed out of his chest and back, forming 2 lines of blood that dripped down. He was in extreme pain. He lifted his hand and pressed on the acupoint to stop the bleeding. "Young master." Someone rushed up to support him. Juk's face was pale. He did not even look at Sect Master Zi Yun, who was supporting him. His ink-black eyes looked at the barrier. A woman was standing on top of the barrier. Her lake-like dress fluttered in the wind, and she held the moon god's sword in her hand. At her feet was a puppet that looked exactly like her. The puppet was wearing the clothes that Ji Xinyue had worn when she escaped from the Purple Cloud sect. At this moment, the clothes were covered in blood. He had been tricked. Juk clenched his fists tightly. Who would have thought that this lass also knew the puppet clone technique? And he actually didn't notice it just now. Ji Xinyue also wrung her hands. He was so close. She was so close to succeeding. This was the way to defeat the enemy that Rongyue Tianlan had thought of on the way. Rongyue Tianlan first taught Ji Xinyue the puppet clone technique. In order to make it realistic, he even took out Ji Xinyue's soul and sealed it on the puppet as a backup. After arriving at the Purple Cloud sect, he would try to lure the 2 powerful enemies away. Then, Ji Xinyue would release the puppet with the Azura saber to cut the barrier and lure Juk out of the shadows. Because the puppet had Ji Xinyue's soul, and the puppet was holding the Azura saber. Chapter 3092. Because Ji Xinyue's soul was in the puppet, and the puppet was holding the Azura saber, the conversation was done by Ji Xinyue controlling the puppet in the dark. It was no different from a conversation between her and Juk. Juk was indeed tricked. According to Rongyue Tianlan's calculations, Juk had to be angered to chase after her without caring about anything else. Juk's blood rushed to his head and he naturally could not calm down, so he did not hold back when he attacked. If he killed Ji Xinyue, his mind would definitely be shaken and he would be distracted for a moment. And the real Ji Xinyue, who had been hiding in the dark, would take advantage of this moment to take out the moon god's sword and launch a sneak attack. Coupled with the puppet's final attack, this plan could be said to be perfect and foolproof. Juk should have died without a doubt. But she did not expect that someone would suddenly appear. Sect Master Ziyun actually broke through the maze at this time and saved Juk. Sect Master Ziyun was too anxious to save Ji Xinyue. Not only did he deflect Ji Xinyue's sword, he even sent her flying with a palm strike. He used a lot of strength in this palm strike. Even though Ji Xinyue had meticulously set up a protective barrier around her body in advance, after being hit by his palm, she could not bear it. The blood in her chest surged, and the smell of blood rushed to her throat. She could not suppress it for a moment and spat out a mouthful of blood. She looked up at Sect Master Ziyun, seemingly crying and laughing at the same time. "Master, you finally attacked me." Sect Master Ziyun had always doted on her. In Ji Xinyue's heart, her master was closer to her than any of her relatives. When she was learning, she was extremely smart and could understand everything with just a hint. No matter what she learned, she could infer many things from one example. In addition, she was a girl, so Sect Master Ziyun had never poked her with a finger after so many years of learning. At most, she would be punished to stand. And now, he had sent her flying with a palm strike, and it was done with a large amount of mental power. If her skills were slightly weaker, she was afraid that this palm strike would have taken her life. Sect Master Ziyun's face was slightly pale, and his voice was cold. "Ji Xinyue, you are too insensible. If you still treat me as your master, get lost now." Ji Xinyue closed her eyes slightly. Actually, at this point, there was no point in saying anything more. Her master would not stop now. Although Juk had suffered a blow from her saber and sword, she had not given him a fatal blow. He was only seriously injured. With his terrifying recovery speed as a devil master, he would be able to recover more than half of his injuries in less than 4 hours. At that time, he could still enter the life-sucking formation to recover. Since the first plan had failed, they could only proceed with the second plan. Ji Xinyue gripped the moon god's sword in her hand tightly and took a deep breath. "Master, I'm sorry, I have to save someone." Suddenly, he chanted an incantation and stabbed his sword at the barrier beneath his feet. Sect Master Ziyun raised his hand and made a hand seal as if he was about to do something. Juk grabbed his wrist and said coldly, "Let her stab." Other than him, the Devil Master, and Huang Luqing, no one else could open this barrier with brute force. Even if this girl concentrated all her power into this sword, she wouldn't be able to damage this barrier in the slightest. It was just a waste of effort. "Capture her alive," he ordered Sect Master Ziyun. Didn't she insist on going against him? Then he would make her despair step by step, and then capture her alive and let her watch as he sucked all the people in the barrier. He originally couldn't bear to let her see this. He even wanted to take her life and send her to reincarnate, so that they could continue their relationship in the next life. But now, he changed his mind. Chapter 3093. This girl deserved to be taught a lesson. He wanted her to understand the true price of angering him. Crack! With a sound like glass shattering, Ji Xinyue's sword pierced through the barrier beneath her feet, causing countless cracks to appear on it like it was made of glass. The barrier was about to break. She had only pierced it once, and the barrier was about to break. How was this possible? Sect Master Ziyun's expression changed. He raised his hand and waved his palm at Ji Xinyue. "Stop." Perhaps it was because the previous palm strike had made Ji Xinyue vomit blood, but Sect Master Ziyun's palm strike was meant to stop her from breaking the barrier again. He did not want to kill her, so he did not use his full strength. After all, he was close to the level of a high god. If Ji Xinyue did not dodge this palm strike in time, it would be extremely fatal. He had taught Ji Xinyue this move before. Not only did she know how to use it, she also knew how to dodge. Sect Master Ziyun thought that she would dodge no matter what, but he did not expect that she had no intention of dodging at all. The palm sword once again pierced towards the barrier that was about to break like lightning. Crack! Crash! Bang! There were 3 consecutive sounds. The first 2 were the sound of the barrier finally breaking. The unbreakable barrier was broken. The next sound was when Sect Master Ziyun's palm struck Ji Xinyu, sending her flying like a paper hawk. She fell to the ground along with the broken barrier. Everything was as Rongyue Tianlan had expected. Because of the poison barrier, the people under the barrier were completely controlled. When Ji Xinyu fell, she fell into the crowd of people walking in formation. She even smashed into a disciple, causing that disciple to tumble down. That disciple got up dizzily. He did not even look at Ji Xinyu, who had fallen to the ground and did not get up for a while. As for the others, they did not have any reaction to Ji Xinyu falling from the sky and continued to run. Everyone formed hand seals, and the array was about to take shape. Ji Xinyu was usually very close to these senior brothers and juniors. If it was in the past, when they saw her suddenly appear, they would have already run over to ask about her well-being. But now, no one cared about her. Even 7th senior brother, who had always been on good terms with her, ignored her when he ran past her. Ji Xinyu forced herself to jump up from the ground. In the end, she did not give up. The moment she landed, she used her psyche force to shout out the Devil Lord's scheme, telling these people to quickly stop setting up the formation. But no one listened to her. It's useless. Xie Zhuk landed, his voice carried a gloating sneer. Ji Xinyu, they have already become puppets, they do not have their own consciousness, even if you break this barrier, you will not be able to stop anything, they are dead for sure. Ji Xinyu had continuously ruined his plans, which made him extremely angry. He wanted nothing more than to teach her a lesson from head to toe, to make her regret, to make her feel sad. Ji Xinyu had suffered 2 consecutive blows from Sect Master Ziyun, and was already heavily injured. She could barely stand, and her face was deathly pale as she staggered backwards. Xie Zhuk wanted to grab her personally. His figure flashed and he wanted to rush forward, but Sect Master Ziyun stopped him. Young Master, this array formation will be set up in 15 minutes. Young Master needs to recuperate first. I will deal with her. Xie Zhuk paused. He naturally understood the importance of the matter. He took a deep breath and coldly ordered, "Don't show any mercy, kill her. Just leave her a soul." Sect Master Ziyun's fingers tightened slightly. "Young Master, actually, you can spare her life, after all, she is a romantic." Chapter 3094. I am not Xie Fenglu. I can't be as tender and protective as him. This woman's body is already dirty, there's no point in keeping her. Sect Master Ziyun was stunned. This time, his meeting with Ji Xinyu was too hasty, and under such circumstances, he had yet to see Ji Xinyu's face clearly. Hearing Xie Zhuk's words, his heart sank, and his gaze fell on Ji Xinyu. With his eyesight, he could naturally tell that Ji Xinyu was no longer a virgin. What's going on? He couldn't help but ask. Wasn't she fine when she escaped yesterday? Ji Xinyu swallowed the blood that was about to rush up her throat and continued to retreat step by step. She sneered, "You should ask this demon master." Sect Master Ziyun's gaze immediately turned to Xie Zhuk. Xie Zhuk said coldly, "It was Huang Luqing who did it. He must have poisoned her with the Heaven's Edge charm poison before he left last night." Sect Master Ziyun's face changed. Heaven's Edge charming poison. He obviously knew how strong this poison was. His face was ashen. Huang Luqing, that bastard. Xinyu had no choice but to lose her virginity. If you want to blame someone, blame Huang Luqing. Juk closed his eyes. In the future, I will naturally punish Wang Luqing. However, Ji Xinyue's body has already been tainted. If she was chaste, she should have calmly committed suicide instead of living in this world. Sect Master Zi Yun, Juk continued, I've said before that only her body is dirty. Her soul is fine. He paused. However, she hasn't known what's good for her recently. After we extract her soul, we can remove her soul and erase all her memories of this life before sending her to reincarnate. After this incident, even if she didn't lose her virginity, with her personality, she probably wouldn't reconcile with him again. It would be better to start over. Juk had always been simple and brutal when it came to matters of the heart. His personality was like Chow Chow's. Only he was allowed to betray others, and no one was allowed to betray him. He could have 3 wives and 4 concubines, or even 100 wives and 1,000 concubines, but he did not allow any of his women to be unfaithful. If there was even the slightest sign of unfaithfulness, he would mercilessly kill them. There was no lack of wrongful killings. Not only did he kill them, but he also dispersed their souls so that he would not be upset when he saw the reincarnated woman in the future. Ji Xinyu had failed him time and time again, and had even been tainted by other men. If it were any other woman who had done the same to him, he would have long since executed them with 1,000 cuts, and even their souls would have been smashed into pieces. He felt that treating Ji Xinyu this way was already an extraordinarily lenient act. It was only because he loved her very much that he did this. After all, Sect Master Zi Yun had stayed by his side for many years and naturally understood his temperament. Hearing such an order, although his heart sank, he was not surprised. Once the Demon Lord command was issued, it could never be changed. Although Grandmaster Zi Yun was reluctant to part with his disciple, he had no other choice. He looked at Ji Xinyu, his eyes filled with struggle and helplessness. Xinyu, you asked for this. Ji Xinyu seemed to have realized that something was wrong. She staggered backwards as fast as she could while pleading with Sect Master Zi Yun. What she said was nothing more than what had happened between master and disciple in the past. By the time she finished speaking, her eyes were already filled with tears. In Sect Master Zi Yun's heart, Ji Xinyu was like his own daughter, the person closest to him. Now that he had to kill her with his own hands, he could not bring himself to do it. When he heard what Ji Xinyu had said, his heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Although he held the treasured sword in his hand, he could not bear to be ruthless. He struck out a few palms at Ji Xinyu, but Ji Xinyu used a strange movement technique to dodge them all. Chapter 3095. The 2 of them, one chasing and one fleeing, shuttled through the crowd of people in the array. Ji Xinyu seemed to be in a panic, running around in the crowd. Juk knew that her martial arts were far inferior to the awakened Sect Master Zi Yun, and she was also severely injured, so he naturally wasn't worried that Ji Xinyu would cause any trouble. He paused for a moment, then sat down cross-legged, wanting to recover. After all, the array was about to start. Left Protector, hurry up. Juk urged. He didn't want Ji Xinyu to still be in the array when he activated it. This was because this formation not only sucked the flesh and blood of humans, but also their souls. When he told Ji Xinyu that he could keep these people's souls, it was just a lie to trick her. He was actually still wary of the moon god's sword in Ji Xinyue's hand. After all, Ji Xinyu had used this sword to break through the barrier just now, shocking everyone. He subconsciously felt that it was because of that sword, so he still warned Sect Master Zi Yun, be careful of her sword. Sect Master Zi Yun was actually very puzzled. He had not used his full strength when he first attacked, but after being dodged by Ji Xinyue's special movement technique, he became a little anxious. Who did this girl learn this set of body movements from? How strange. The time to activate the array was about to arrive. Once the array was activated, no one would be able to escape. If he didn't kill her now, he was afraid that both of them would die here. He steeled his heart and was about to use his killer move when he suddenly heard a scream from the center of the array. He was shocked and subconsciously turned around, only to see his fifth disciple, who had originally set up the array, lying in a pool of blood with Ji Xinyue's Azura saber stabbed into his back. Old 5. He turned pale with fright and widened his eyes in disbelief. How was this possible? This Azura saber could actually move on its own. Damn it, he only paid attention to that moon god's sword. He didn't expect that this saber would suddenly have such a strong intelligence. Because the disciples who were setting up the array had their minds controlled, they could only react instinctively and move according to the formation that they had rehearsed beforehand. Half of their minds were still controlled by sect master Ziyun and Huang Luqing. Normally, if they were attacked, under the control of these people could still counterattack and dodge, and their martial arts were even better than usual. His reaction would also be very fast. But now, Huang Luqing was entangled by Rongyue Tianlan, and sect master Ziyun was chasing after Ji Xinyue. Furthermore, sect master Ziyun had never thought that Ji Xinyue would try to assassinate her fifth senior brother, so she was completely unprepared for this. That saber came and went like a ghost. Without any warning, it suddenly appeared and stabbed that disciple with the force of a thunderbolt. The fifth disciple lay motionless on the ground. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. He couldn't care less about Ji Xinyue. With a leap, he pounced towards the fifth disciple. He still had a sliver of hope in his heart. Although his fifth disciple had been stabbed in the heart, he was still a monarch god. As long as his head wasn't chopped off and he was saved in time, he wouldn't be killed so easily. Ji Xinyue also felt a sharp pain in her heart the moment her fifth senior brother fell to the ground. Fifth senior brother doted on her and even saved her life once. The two of them drank together. When she was depressed, fifth senior brother would come to comfort her. But now, for the sake of the big picture, she had no choice but to kill him with her own hands. She knew that after her fifth senior brother was stabbed, he would lose his life. Because her Azura saber and moon god's sword had been dealt with by Rongyue Tianlan beforehand. Chapter 3096. Her Azura saber and moon god's sword had been dealt with by Rongyue Tianlan beforehand. Whether it was a saber or a sword, as long as it pierced a person's heart, no matter if they were a divine lord or an immortal, they would all die. They couldn't be saved. The two plans that Rongyue Tianlan and she had made could be said to be extremely meticulous. If one plan failed, they would immediately use the second plan. Moreover, these two plans complemented each other, making it impossible to guard against. For example, breaking this barrier was not only due to the moon god's sword's contribution, it also included some special techniques. Since Rongyue Tianlan had heard about this array from Shinjiuli, he had naturally heard the great god talk about the solution to this array. Moreover, the great god's solution was also very different. Even Huang Luqing, who set up the array, did not know this solution. This solution was simple but not simple. It required 3 conditions. First, the blood of the person who broke the array and the blood of the demon king, who needed to use this array to suck human flesh and blood, dripped onto the barrier. Second, there was a meteoric iron sword that could break all solid fortresses. Third, the person who broke the array had to be stronger than a divine lord and was a woman. And Ji Xinyue had met all 3 conditions. Her blood had long been taken out and stored in a puppet. Although she had failed to assassinate Xie, she had still successfully stabbed him, causing his blood and her blood to drip onto the barrier. Everything that happened after that was logical. Even the smart Xie and sect master Ziyun had fallen for her trick. Now, she had finally succeeded. After killing 5th senior brother, this array could not be set up in a short period of time. However, personally ending her senior brother's life still made her heart ache. However, she could not care less about being sad at this time. Just as Sect Master Ziyun leaped towards fifth senior brother, she took the opportunity to raise her hand, and the moon god's sword in her palm shot towards Xiejuk, who had just stood up in shock. This demon was the culprit. He was the cause of all this tragedy. Even if she had to risk her life, she had to get rid of him to prevent future trouble. She used all her psychic power in this throw. The sword split into 6 in the air, and a cold light flashed, sealing off all of Xiejuk's escape routes. Xiejuk could not avoid it, and his expression changed drastically. Young master. Young master, be careful. There were 2 exclamations, one long and one short. A figure pounced on Xiejuk like lightning and pushed him to the ground. At the same time, a swift and fierce palm wind slammed towards Ji Xinyu with an earth-shattering force. The one who pounced on Xiejuk and saved him was Huang Luqing, and the one who attacked Ji Xinyu with his palm wind was Sect Master Ziyun. He did not hold back in this palm strike, but he had gathered almost all of his power. Ji Xinyu had used up all of her strength in that throw just now. Hearing the fierce wind behind her, she wanted to teleport, but because of the lack of strength, she couldn't do so. Just as the palm was about to land on her back, a blue light flashed from the side. Before she could react, the blue light carried her and jumped sideways. Ji Xinyu heard a bang. With a bang, the person holding her swayed slightly and flew out with her along with the force of the palm wind. Ji Xinyu panted as she stood on a small platform. She grabbed the sleeves of the person beside her. How are you? The person who had saved her and blocked the palm strike for her was Rongyue Tianlan. He had been hit by Sect Master Ziyun's palm wind. Although it did not hit any vital points, it still caused the blood in his chest to churn a few times. The moment he landed on the ground with Ji Xinyu in his arms, he detected the injuries on her body. Her injuries were not light. Her heart meridian was shaken, and the blood in her body was in chaos. Chapter 3097. But the little girl's eyes were wide open. She ignored her own injuries and focused all her attention on him. She probably saw that his face was a little pale, and her fingers were still holding his wrist, as if she wanted to check his pulse. She was really worried about him. Rongyue Tianlan's heart was filled with warmth. He tightened his arms around her waist and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine." Ji Xinyu heard that his voice was more energetic and relaxed. She subconsciously said, "We did it, my 5th senior brother." Rongyue Tianlan knew that she was conflicted at the moment. He kissed her forehead and said, "Xinyu is great. Don't worry, I will be responsible for reviving your 5th senior brother in the future." Ji Xinyu was sad and happy. She opened her mouth to say something, but Rongyue Tianlan stuffed a pill into her mouth and said, "Good girl, eat it." Ji Xinyu naturally swallowed it. Before the cool air rose in her stomach, Rongyue Tianlan had already picked her up and said, "Let's go." Whether it was Sect Master Ziyun or Huang Luqing, they were both people who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. They were close to the high god level and should be about the same level as Shinjiuli. Of course, their martial arts were not as good as Shinjiuli's, but it was more than enough to deal with Rongyue Tianlan and Divine Lord Ji Xinyu who had just ascended. In a one-on-one fight, Rongyue Tianlan relied on the mysterious martial arts and array techniques he had learned from other places to exchange a few hundred moves with Huang Luqing. After a few hundred moves, he would be defeated, not to mention, he had recently used forbidden techniques frequently. For example, he had teleported from Carefree Island to Azure City to save people. For example, he had added his spiritual force to the Azura Blade and Moon God's Sword. For example, he had used a portion of his high god blood in the puppet. For example, he had set up a large array to trap Sect Master Zi Yun, then he had fought with Huang Luqing in the air for a few hundred moves. He could have delayed Huang Luqing for a while, but the sound of Ji Xinyu breaking the enchantment had alarmed Huang Luqing. This was probably out of Huang Luqing's expectations. Or maybe he had suddenly realized something and went berserk. He tried to break free from Rongyue Tianlan's entanglement and return to the array. But Rongyue Tianlan tried his best to buy time for Ji Xinyu, until Rongyue Tianlan sensed that there seemed to be movement of Sect Master Zi Yun in the enchantment below. He was immediately shocked. Fearing that Ji Xinyu would suffer a great loss at the hands of Sect Master Zi Yun, he immediately turned around and left. He and Huang Luqing arrived almost at the same time. The moment he arrived, he saw Ji Xinyu brandishing her treasured sword to assassinate Xie Zhuk, while Sect Master Zi Yun mercilessly struck Ji Xinyu with his palm in order to save her. Huang Luqing and he had pounced on different targets, each saving the people they cared about the most. Rongyue Tianlan's back was still swept by Sect Master Zi Yun. If it was in the past, it would be fine. However, under his continuous consumption of energy, he could not hold on any longer. Now that the crucial fifth disciple was dead, Rongyue Tianlan naturally did not want to continue fighting in a situation where they were outnumbered. He carried Ji Xinyu and was about to run. He made a hand seal with his fingers and was about to use the teleportation technique to escape. Unexpectedly, as soon as he flew up, a large blood-red cover came down from the sky, trapping everyone inside. Rongyue Tianlan's expression changed. Blood Demon Shield. He suddenly raised his head and saw Huang Luqing standing there, smiling coldly at them. Do you think you can destroy my array like this? Since that disciple was killed by you, then you can take his place. His voice was cold, as if he was an emissary from hell. Flipping to the next page, there was a surprise. Haha, it was a surprise for Mumu. Little friends, do you see the voting button? Reach out your little hand and click on it. You can vote all your monthly votes and recommendation votes. It was the last day of the month. The monthly votes would be invalid if they did not vote. Boo-hoo, the monthly votes were the lifeblood of the author now. Mumu tearfully begged for everyone's support. Mwah. There will be an update in the evening. Chapter 3098. The Blood Demon Shield was a taboo technique of the superior mermaid race. It was connected to the soul of the person who set up the shield. They were bound together for good or ill. Once this shield was set up, unless the person who set up the shield wanted to release someone, there was no way they could escape. Of course, the person who set up the shield also couldn't leave. If he wanted to leave, he would have to break the shield first. However, he could send his companions out of the shield. In other words, Huang Luqing could send Xie Zhuk and Sect Master Purple Cloud out of the shield, but he couldn't. Unless he didn't want to restrain Rongyue Yishenlin and Ji Xinyu. After this shield was set up, those who were covered by it wouldn't be able to escape no matter what. They could only desperately fight with the person who set up the shield and kill them in order to escape. Rongyue Yishenlin was indeed someone who dealt with array formations and magic shields all year round. As soon as he saw the shape and color of the shield, he recognized it. His heart sank to the bottom of the earth. In terms of true martial arts, he was inferior to Huang Luqing, much less Sect Master Purple Cloud who was on the same level as Huang Luqing. He feared that this would be a battle of life and death. Although Ji Xinyu didn't recognize what this shield was, she could tell that it was unusual from Rongyue Yishenlin's frozen body. She held his hand. What's wrong? Rongyue Yishenlin didn't speak. He gently patted her hand and stuffed a medicine bottle into her palm. Then, he pulled her behind him and said to her with a sound transmission, "You are heavily injured." If there is a chance, immediately leave and use a teleportation technique to escape to Carefree Island. There is an extremely powerful enchantment there that outsiders cannot easily break in. You can heal there and wait for reinforcements. Ji Xinyue's heart sank. What about you? I will also look for a chance to escape and call for reinforcements. But the distance to call for reinforcements is far too long. It will take at least 2 or 3 months. You can wait on Carefree Island. It won't be too late to leave after you've completely recovered. Ji Xinyue looked into his eyes. Really? Of course. You also know that I came from another continent and made a friend there. As long as that person comes, these people will not be his match. Your senior apprentice brother's revival will also depend on him. Don't worry. Rongyu Tianlan reassured her. When Rongyu Tianlan heard from Ji Xinyu that sect master Ziyun and Huang Luqing were from the ancient devil clan, he knew that there would be a tough battle in the future. Therefore, he had informed Yunxi and asked her to quickly return to the Tianxi continent to get reinforcements. However, the journey was too long. It would take at least 2 months for Yunxi to travel back and forth. Rongyu Tianlan's original plan was that after he and Ji Xinyue broke through the Demon Lord's flesh-sucking array formation, they would rush back to Carefree Island and rely on the enchantment there to deal with Huang Luqing and the others. It wouldn't be a problem for them to last a month or 2. But now, distant water could not quench the present thirst. On the other side, Sect Master Ziyun was also injured. In order to save Xiejuk, he had been stabbed by Ji Xinyue's moon god sword, right in the middle of his left arm. Although it was not fatal, blood still dyed half of his sleeve red. The wound caused by the moon god's sword wasn't easy to heal. Even though he pointed at it several times, he still wasn't able to stop the bleeding. Thus, he simply wrapped a cloth around it. This stupid method actually worked. At this time, Xiejuk was so angry that he was stunned. His eyes were fixed on Rongyu Tianlan and Ji Xinyue's hands. He suddenly realized something and shouted out, "Her virginity was taken by you." Chapter 3099. Rongyu Tianlan glanced at him with eyes as cold as ice. She couldn't be bothered to answer his idiotic question. Xiejuk's gaze was as sharp as a knife. He wanted nothing more than to cut their hands apart. He suddenly sneered, "Ji Xinyue, do you think he's your backer? Do you think you'll be safe with him by your side? Let me tell you, this blood demon shield." He explained the characteristics of the blood demon shield and finally said, "You won't be able to escape. You'll only die if you stay by his side. I can give you 2 choices now. Do you want to hear them?" Ji Xinyue's heart sank when she heard the characteristics of the blood demon shield. She already understood the general situation. She had her own plans, but she still asked, "What are the 2 choices?" Xiejuk thought that she was finally moved. His heart moved slightly, and he revealed a smug expression. "First, cripple all your cultivation and follow me out. I will spare your life on account of Xia Fenglu and even keep you by my side to serve me. I'll let you be my concubine." Ji Xinyue raised her eyebrows. "So good. You don't despise me for being a withered woman. Isn't it time to kill me?" Xiejuk clenched his fists in his sleeves and said coldly, "So what if I despise you? In the end, Xia Fenglu loves you. He can't bear to kill you. It makes me feel uncomfortable. So as long as you're obedient, I can keep you by my side. However, you can't be my wife, you can only be my concubine." Ji Xinyue was expressionless. "What's the second choice?" "The second choice is very simple. I'll let you die here, then extract your soul and imprison it by my side. In order to punish you for being disobedient, I won't send you to reincarnate for the time being. Instead, you'll be my ghost emissary. As a ghost emissary, you won't have your own thoughts. You'll only listen to my orders and kill people. I'll make you a ghost emissary for 100 years. When I'm happy, I'll send you to reincarnate. Ji Xinyue couldn't help but laugh. Her smile was both mocking and mocking. What if I don't choose either? That's not up to you. Xie Zhuk sneered. Ji Xinyue raised the moon god's sword in her hand and sneered, my life is mine. Even the heavens can't control me. What's more, you're just an unawakened devil master. Without these two protectors, you are nothing. What right do you have to decide my life and death? Her words were vicious enough. It could be said that she had poked Xie Zhuk's sore spot. His face was ashen as he looked at Rongyu Yishinlin. You keep saying that you like her, but you're just going to watch her court death. She doesn't understand the power of this blood demon barrier, but I don't believe that you don't understand it either. Rongyu Yishinlin held Ji Xinyue's hand and did not even look at Xie Zhuk. I will fight for a third path for her. Although her voice was faint, her tone was firm. Ji Xinyue's heart warmed, and she held his hand. No matter what, I will go through thick and thin with you. If you live, I live. If you die, I die. Her voice was loud and clear, and everyone heard her. Rongyu Yishinlin didn't say anything. She just held her little hand again. Nothing was said. Their interaction made Xie Zhuk extremely uncomfortable. He sneered with an ashen face, what a pair of lovebirds. What a pity, Ji Xinyue, you are deeply in love with him, but he only sees you as a substitute. A substitute for a certain woman. Is it worth it for you to live and die for him like this? Rongyu Yishinlin slightly stiffened and couldn't help but turn to look at Ji Xinyue. I didn't use you as a substitute. The ending will probably be decided tomorrow or the day after. Sprinkle flowers, sprinkle flowers. There will be no update in the early morning, so everyone doesn't have to wait. Tomorrow's update will start in the afternoon. Today is the night of the monthly votes bloody battle. Those who have monthly votes, don't forget to throw them out. They will be invalid after the early morning. Chapter 3100. Ji Xinyue interrupted him, you don't have to explain, I believe you. She then turned to look at Xie Zhuk and said in a slow but powerful voice, it's worth it. Even if he uses me as a substitute, it's worth it for me to live and die with him now. Xie Zhuk was speechless. He was furious. He took a step back and instructed Huang Luqing, you can start now. Just leave her with 2 souls. Huang Luqing paused and asked, which 2 souls should I leave for her? It was as if Ji Xinyue's life was already in his hands. The awareness soul and the remembrance soul. The awareness soul and remembrance soul together could retain a person's memories and feelings, and could experience pain. Therefore, he wanted to leave her 2 souls by his side, so that she would regret the choice she made today day and night. Okay. Huang Luqing agreed. He also knew that this would be a bloody battle. Although Rongyu Yishinlin and Ji Xinyue would definitely lose, they would definitely fight with their lives on the line. At that time, it would be unavoidable for them to be implicated. Therefore, Huang Luqing raised his hand and sent Xie Zhuk out of the blood demon barrier, letting him listen to the good news outside. Ji Xinyue also understood that it was time to fight with their lives on the line. Moreover, she and Rongyu Yishinlin would most likely lose, but she and Rongyu Yishinlin had already done their best in this matter. As long as they could advance and retreat together with their loved ones, even if they died together, it would not be so terrible. Tianlan, if we really reach the point of no return, just scatter my soul. Ji Xinyue sent a voice transmission to Rongyu Yishinlin. Rongyu Yishinlin held her hand and did not agree to her request. Instead, he asked, do you believe me? I believe you. Ji Xinyue answered without hesitation. Rongyu Ishanlin was gratified. He hugged her waist and touched her earlobe with his lips. If you believe me, you have to listen to me. When you go out later, kill Xie and eliminate all future troubles. Ji Xinyue froze. Then I'm fine. I'll just be a little injured. Remember, don't worry about me when you go out. Get rid of Xie first. As he spoke, he grabbed her hand and quickly drew a seal in her palm. Strangely enough, when he drew the talisman, blood would automatically drip from his fingertips. This blood quickly seeped into her palm, but nothing could be seen on the surface of her skin. Because they were talking in a secret language, the people on the other side did not know what they were talking about. They only saw that they looked very close together, as if a young couple was cheering each other up in a desperate situation. When Rongyue Tianlan was drawing the talisman in Ji Xinyue's hand, it was the time when Huang Luqing sent Xie out of the array. Sect Master Zi Yun saw Rongyue Tianlan's little trick, but he was conflicted because he wanted to see with his own eyes and even kill his favorite disciple with his own hands. For a moment, he was a little absent-minded. Even when he saw Rongyue Tianlan's actions, he didn't pay attention. Besides, he knew the power of this formation very well. Rongyu and Tianlan could not escape no matter what. Now, no matter what he did, it was just a last-ditch struggle. Let him and Ji Xinyu be intimate for a while longer. Now that things had developed to this point, this was the only thing he could do for Ji Xinyu. He wanted her to say goodbye to her lover before she died. Huang Luqing was actually looking forward to this battle. He had not met an opponent for many, many years. After Xie died, he had traveled all over the Sanskrit continent in order to find a way to resurrect him. He had walked alone in this world for tens of thousands of years, but he had never met a decent opponent. Chapter 3101. Men were all hot-blooded, and he was no exception. Even if he hid his identity and martial arts, he still wanted to spar with an expert. However, although these experts were quite famous, their skin was too fragile. Even a rare exalted immortal from 10,000 years ago was nothing but a piece of trash in his eyes. After exchanging a few blows with him, he was sent on his way. Because he had to hide his tracks, the experts who had fought with him only had one ending: death. Not only did they die, but their souls were also dispersed. Only in this way could his secret identity not be exposed. Over the years, countless top experts had died at his hands. In the eyes of the world, these experts had disappeared because their bodies could not be found and their souls could not be summoned. Life without an opponent was lonely. Now, it was rare to meet Rongyue Tianlan. Perhaps it was because this person had stayed in other continents for thousands of years, but his martial arts were very strange. It made his heart itch, and he had long wanted to fight with him. Previously, he was anxious to help Xie revive, so everything else was put aside. He had originally planned to wait for Xie to successfully recover before going to find Rongyue Tianlan to spar. Now, there was no need for him to look for him. He could fight to his heart's content now. He clapped his hands, and a pair of swords appeared in his hands. The two swords were soft swords, as bright as silver and as soft as silk. He then turned around and instructed Sect Master Zi Yun, "I'll leave that girl to you. Follow young master's instructions." Sect Master Zi Yun did not speak. He only slowly revealed his weapon, a strange and ancient scimitar. He had already paid the price for a moment of soft-heartedness, causing his fifth disciple to die in advance. He had almost failed. Now, he could not be soft-hearted anymore. Since he was going to kill her sooner or later, he might as well use his ultimate move to give her a quick death. Although the fifth disciple, who was the key to this array, was dead, if he killed Rongyue Tianlan to fill in the array's core, then this array could be activated again. Although the effect was not as strong as before, it was still possible to restore 80 to 90% of young master's power. Everything was because of these two people's own deaths. As a friend and a master, he had already done his best for them. He could not be merciful anymore. Ji Xinyue also clenched her weapon tightly, her palms sweating. She knew that the moment of life and death was coming. Rongyue Tianlan stretched out his palm, and the sky-blue sword was held in his hand. A great battle was about to break out. Huang Liuqing's eyes burned with passion, her figure flashed, her movement technique pouncing towards Rongyue Tianlan like lightning. Sect Master Ziyun moved almost at the same time as Huang Liuqing, rushing towards Ji Xinyue. When the two of them rushed over, they brought with them a strong gust of wind. Before they even got close, their auras were already pressing down like mountains and seas. The moon god's sword in Ji Xinyue's hand flashed, and just as she was about to rush forward, a golden light wave suddenly flashed in front of her eyes. That light wave rose abruptly and went straight for Sect Master Ziyun and Huang Liuqing, who were rushing over, enveloping them within. The two of them collided with the golden light and were bounced back by the light. Ji Xinyue had never expected this situation. While she was stunned, Rongyue Tianlan suddenly grabbed her hand. "Xinyue, remember what I just said." Ji Xinyue's eyes widened. Before she could react, blood gushed out from Rongyue Tianlan's palm like a fountain, connecting with her palm that had just been drawn with the talisman. The place where their palms connected instantly condensed into a red enchantment, completely enveloping Ji Xinyue inside. "One more chapter. If you don't say stop, there will be." Chapter 3102. What are you doing? Ji Xinyue's expression changed. "I'll send you out." In the blink of an eye, Rongjui Shenlan's face had already become abnormally pale. He even smiled. "Xinyue, I said that I would fight for a third path for you." With a wave of his hand, he flew up with Ji Xinyue, who was wrapped in a blood-colored barrier. Ji Xinyue's body directly crashed into the blood demon barrier. Strangely enough, the blood demon barrier that couldn't be cut by blades and couldn't be burned by fire actually fused with the blood-colored barrier on her body. Ji Xinyue seemed to have fallen into a quagmire, and her body directly passed through the blood demon barrier. She subconsciously grabbed Rongjui Shenlan, wanting to pull him out as well, but she grabbed onto the blood demon barrier. She watched as her palm and Rongjui Shenlan's palm instantly separated. Through the translucent blood demon barrier, she could see that Rongjui Shenlan's body fell down the moment he sent her out. Ji Xinyue's hands and feet were cold. Before she could stabilize herself on the blood demon barrier, there was a wind behind her head. She also reacted quickly. Her body slanted out, and when she turned around, she saw Xie Zhu's surprised and angry eyes. Xie Zhu was seriously injured just now, and felt that the blood demon barrier was safe. He no longer had anything to worry about and only needed to wait for the good news. Therefore, after he came out, he began to meditate and heal his injuries. Before he could meditate, he felt a slight vibration below his body. He opened his eyes in surprise and saw Ji Xinyue being sent out. He was shocked and furious. He wanted to sneak attack Ji Xinyue before she could stabilize herself, but he didn't expect this girl to be so smart and dodge like lightning. Ji Xinyue thought of Rongjui Shenlan's words, and when she saw Xie Zhu again, her eyes turned red. If it wasn't for this person, how could she and Rongjui Shenlan be in this state? She didn't say much to Xie Zhu. Without another word, the moon god's sword had already attacked Xie Zhu. Inside the blood demon barrier, Huang Liuqing and Sect Master Ziyun obviously didn't expect Rongjui Shenlan to use this move. The thing he took out was called a sword, but with a sudden wave, it was a mountain and water fan. It was that mountain and water fan that instantly created a golden array, trapping the two of them inside. This golden array is also transparent. When Huang Luqing saw that Rongyue Tianlan had sent Ji Xinyu out of the Blood Devil barrier, she immediately panicked. The current Xiejuk was definitely not Ji Xinyu's match. Xiejuk was in danger. He and sect leader Ziyun looked at each other and immediately began to break the golden array. Although the golden array was powerful, it was not difficult for Huang Luqing and sect master Ziyun, who were proficient in array formations. The moment Rongjui Shenlong landed, the golden array emitted cracking sounds and was about to shatter. Once these two people escaped, they would definitely be like flood dragons emerging from the sea. Huang Luqing would immediately remove the blood demon barrier to resolve Xiejuk's danger, while sect master Ziyun would entangle Rongyue Tianlan. At that time, they would still be able to turn defeat into victory. At most, it would take some effort. This was Huang Luqing's wishful thinking. Although his abacus was brilliant, he underestimated Rongyue Tianlan's mysterious skill. Just as the golden array was about to crack, Rongjui Shenlong, who had landed on the ground, pounced over and pressed his blood-stained palm on the golden light barrier. His blood was flowing, and in the blink of an eye, the golden light barrier was dyed golden red. Miraculously, the cracks on the golden array disappeared. Huang Luqing's expression really changed. He had estimated the strength of Xiejuk and Ji Xinyue. With Ji Xinyue's ability, she would definitely take Xiejuk's life in less than the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Chapter 3103. That way, all his previous efforts would be wasted. That would be a pain he could not bear. Xiejuk was resurrected by him using a forbidden technique. Once his soul was scattered, there would be no hope of condensing it again. It was useless to regret it now. He and sect master Ziyun began to frantically break the array. Rongyue Tianlan lay on the golden array, blood flowing out of his palm like it was free. Wherever Huang Luqing and the others were about to attack, that place was strengthened by the blood-formed talismans. Huang Luqing was so anxious that smoke was about to come out of her head. Rongyue Tianlan, your blood is limited. You can't hold on for long with this method. Quickly withdraw the array. I promise you, if you withdraw the array now, I can spare your and Ji Xinyue's lives. Rongyue Tianlan, withdraw the array. If anything happens to our young master, I will send both of you to the 18th level of hell, never to be reincarnated. Rongyue Tianlan. Huang Luqing quickly broke the array while threatening him, but Rongyue Tianlan acted as if he didn't hear it. He was still laughing. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper, but he was still smiling calmly. His posture was not good, but his expression was like an elegant gentleman walking in the suburbs. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the two people in the golden red array. He even had the heart to tease, I will indeed die, but I will drag you along with me. The 18th level of hell, right? You will die, but I won't. Huang Luqing still didn't understand Rongyue Tianlan's mysterious martial arts. It was true that Rongyue Tianlan had just become a Shangxian not long ago, but his most outstanding feature was not his martial arts, but his strange techniques. Rongyue Tianlan was a scattered immortal. He liked to hunt and learn new things. He had not only stayed in the Tianxi continent and the Fanning continent, but also went to many places and learned some things that even he himself didn't know were useful or not. In terms of learning, even Shenjiuli couldn't compare to him. He was extremely smart, and his aptitude was not inferior to Shenjiuli's. It was just that he had too many hobbies, which made it difficult for him to concentrate on any special development. Therefore, in terms of kung fu, he was far from Shenjiuli. He was best at medicine and formations. According to his own words, he was a kind, compassionate immortal. He didn't like fighting and killing, and preferred to find joy in curing difficult diseases. Of course, since he was exploring the outside world, he still needed to have the necessary defensive skills, so he excitedly cultivated all kinds of formations. Whenever he encountered someone who wanted to offend him, before they could even get close to him, he would fan them into the array formation and knock them on the head. It was basically effortless for him, and even the folds of his clothes wouldn't be messed up. Over the years, there were many people who came to him for medical treatment. There were also many people who knew all kinds of martial arts. Among them, there was no lack of people who were outstanding in setting up arrays. Rongyue Tianlan used treating and saving people in exchange for the other party's secret array. In this way, he became the #1 expert in array formations. The shining golden array he had just set up had a nice name, Reincarnation Array. In fact, it was a mutual destruction array. Not only would the trapped person enter reincarnation and die, but even the person who set up the array couldn't escape death, or even die more miserably. Because this array was set up with the blood of the person who set up the array and 1 soul and 7 spirits. Once it was used, it would be a life or death situation. In the end, when the blood of the person who set up the array ran out, this reincarnation array would completely explode, and the people trapped in the array wouldn't even be left with ashes. Chapter 3104. Of course, the body of the person who laid down the array formation would also explode along with their soul, turning into particles in the air. The reason that Rongyu Yishanlan had learned this array formation in the past was only for fun. After learning it, he had hidden it at the bottom of his chest. He never thought that there would be a day when he would be able to use this array formation. But he never imagined that he would be forced to use it today. This was the third path that he had thought of for Ji Xinyue. He would protect his own woman, he didn't need her to submit to some scum. He knew that she wouldn't submit either. Rather than both of them dying here, he might as well use his own death to sweep away all obstacles for her. No one would be able to threaten her again. Rongyu Yishanlan was an expert at scheming. He had already calculated everything in his heart. He calculated that Ji Xinyue would be able to deal with Xie Juk in the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Then, she would listen to him and leave this place, returning to Carefree Island. And he would be able to support this samsara array for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. At that time, Ji Xinyue would have left, and he would be able to drag the 2 people in the array formation down with him. To use his life in exchange for her life and also drag the 3 greatest scourges down with him, Rongyu Yishanlan felt that this was worth it. As for Ji Xinyue's senior apprentice brothers, they could only wait for Shinjioli to come and clean up the mess for him. In his life, he had helped the great divinity clean up many messes. Now, it was finally the great divinity's turn to clean up for him. With the great divinity's abilities, he might be able to gather his shattered soul back together. After several hundred years, he would be able to be reborn as a hero once more. He believed that Shinjioli would do this after he arrived. He would also clearly explain things to Ji Xinyue so that she wouldn't be too sad about his death. Of course, with this thought in mind, Ji Xinyue wouldn't commit suicide. She would wait for him. If his soul was too shattered, Shinjioli wouldn't be able to gather it back together. After all, several hundred years had already passed. Time was the best medicine for healing pain. Even if he couldn't be revived, she wouldn't be too sad. In his last life, he owed her. In this life, he would also repay her with his life. This could be considered the heaven samsara. His only regret was that he had courted death by rejecting this marriage and not being with her earlier. Rongyu Tianlan's estimation was correct. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Ji Xinyu had really taken care of Xie Juk. When the moon god's sword stabbed into Xie Juk's heart, Xie Juk's eyes widened with unwillingness. He finally asked, "Xinyu, have you ever liked me?" "No. Never." "Where is Xie Fenglu?" "You've never liked her before. He has done so much for you. He's my junior brother. We're brothers." "Then he really isn't worth it. He has never treated you like a brother." Haha. Xie Juk finally closed his eyes, his heart filled with unwillingness. Ji Xinyue looked at the black fox that had returned to its original form at her feet, and was momentarily stunned. Killing him was not the end, she still needed to disperse his soul to completely cut off his path of resurrection. Ji Xinyue knew how to disperse his soul, but she did not know how to separate it. She still wanted to separate the part of her soul that belonged to Xie Fenglu, but she paused for a moment and then heard an angry roar from below. That roar was clear and mournful, causing the blood demon barrier beneath Ji Xinyue's feet to tremble slightly. This blood demon barrier was originally soundproof. Even if the sky and earth were to be turned upside down, they shouldn't be able to hear each other. But now, this roar could be heard. It was obvious that the person who let out the roar had gone berserk. That was it. He bowed and thanked everyone for their rewards and votes. Chapter 3105. Ji Xinyue's eardrums were also buzzing from the shock, her fingers suddenly tightened. This howl was Huang Liuqing's. After all, Xie Zhuk was resurrected by him using a secret technique. The two of them had a special telepathic connection. Once Xie Zhuk died, Huang Liuqing could also sense it from inside. Xinyu, leave quickly. Follow my instructions and split up. Rongyue Tianlan's voice rang in Ji Xinyue's ears. His voice was hurried, and there was a faint trace of weakness in his voice. Ji Xinyue was worried and tried her best to look down. Through the translucent blood barrier, she could faintly see Rongyue Tianlan lying on the golden red array's light wave with a rather strange movement technique. The light wave was already shaking endlessly like a pendulum, and was about to break. She could not see Rongyue Tianlan's appearance clearly, but she strangely felt that he was rapidly weakening. He might not be able to escape. He just wanted to save her. Ji Xinyue faintly felt that something was wrong, and made up her mind. Rongyue Tianlan, if you want to leave, let's leave together. Stop talking nonsense. Leave quickly. Rongyue Tianlan was already anxious, and rarely spoke harshly to her. Huang Liuqing and the golden red barrier below had already gone crazy, and was about to break out. He was afraid that he would not be able to hold on until the moment his blood ran out, and would have to self-destruct to prevent the situation from falling into a passive state again. All right, I'll leave. Rongyue Tianlan, I want you to live. If anything happens to you, I don't want to live either. Ji Xinyue could no longer enter inside, so she naturally could not help him. Although she was extremely worried about Rongyue Tianlan, she did not want to be his stumbling block. So she would listen to his orders and leave, but not too far away. She had to see him come out alive with her own eyes. Rongyue Tianlan could no longer answer Ji Xinyue's words. His blood had already run dry, and his self-destruction had entered the 10-second countdown. Rongyue Tianlan, Ji Xinyue, I will kill you. I will let you die with Zhuk. Huang Liuqing was already mad with anger, and recklessly rampaged inside. Seeing that he was about to break the golden red barrier, Rongyue Tianlan's fingers formed a seal, and was about to completely detonate. Suddenly, a string of zither sounds came from outside. The zither sound seemed to float from the sky, but it went straight into the blood barrier, allowing everyone inside the barrier to hear it clearly. Rongyue Tianlan's body suddenly stiffened. His eyes suddenly lit up. The sound of the zither, Shinjiuli. In the blink of an eye, the golden red array beneath him shattered with a bang. The samsara array was finally broken by Huang Liuqing and sect master Ziyun. The huge airwave directly sent Rongyue Tianlan, who was lying on the golden red array diagram, flying. Rongyue Tianlan's body crashed into the blood demon shield above his head like a paper kite. The demonic blood shield was extremely poisonous, comparable to the strongest sulfuric acid. If it wasn't for the protective barrier around him, he would definitely be poisoned and might even melt. Rongyue Tianlan's qi and blood were almost exhausted. Being sent flying like this, he couldn't make a protective barrier at all. Just as his body was about to hit the blood demon barrier, the barrier that couldn't be opened no matter what he did actually broke with a tapaw sound. Rong Yu Tianlan's body passed through the fragments and flew straight into the air. Pooh! He crashed into a cotton-like soft place. Before he lost consciousness, he vaguely saw a man in a white robe and a woman in red standing not far away. He heaved a sigh of relief and spat out a few words, "I'll leave it to you." Then he felt relieved and boldly closed his eyes. Chapter 3106. When Huang Luqing and Sect Master Ziyun rushed out, they saw Rongyu at Tianlan fall into a cloud that was flashing with a faint white light. Beside the cloud stood an extremely outstanding man and woman. Not only were they peerless in appearance, but their auras were also extremely powerful. Especially the white-robed man, he did not deliberately release his aura. He just stood there casually and looked down at them. That cold gaze almost made them shiver in an instant. The more powerful a person was, the more keenly they could sense the strength of their opponent. Huang Luqing and Sect Master Ziyun knew that they had met a formidable opponent. Where did this man and woman come from? Judging from their auras and skills, they should already be at the deity level, but when did the Sanskrit continent have a deity? Deities were only legendary existences, okay? Huang Luqing was even more shocked. Today's events were beyond his expectations. First, Rongyue Tianlan could use a secret technique to send Ji Xinyue out of the blood demon barrier and trap them in a golden red array for half an hour. Now, there was this man and woman. That man used the zither to break his blood demon barrier with just a raise of his hand. Where did they come from? Who are you? Sect Master Ziyun said in a deep voice. The first thing Huang Luqing did when he came out was to use a secret technique to search for Xie Zhuk's soul. Not bad, Xie Zhuk's soul was still there and had not dissipated. That meant he still had hope of revival. Huang Luqing was about to cry, but he held it back. He had just sensed that Xie Zhuk was crazy when he died. He wanted to destroy the world at all costs and let everyone in this world be buried with Xie Zhuk. Now that he sensed that Xie Zhuk's soul was fine, he heaved a sigh of relief. His surging blood finally calmed down. He immediately cast a spell and gathered Xie Zhuk's soul together, forming it at his fingertips. A white light suddenly flashed over and struck the black soul that had just gathered. Swoosh! With a soft sound, the soul that had just been successfully gathered instantly shattered into powder, turning into specks of light that scattered in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared. The white light came too quickly and was too powerful. Even if Huang Luqing was prepared, he could not dodge in time. His expression suddenly changed as he looked up into the sky. A monstrous hatred instantly ignited in his eyes. You're going too far. Sect Master Ziyun's face paled as well. It's over. It was all over. That white light had come from Shinjiuli. With a casual attack, he had dispersed Xie Zhuk's soul. The dark aura of the soul was too strong, and it was gathered by Rongyue Tianlan's enemy. It must be damned. His gaze swept past the cloud where Rongyue Tianlan was, and when he looked at Huang, Lu, and Qing, his cold eyes flashed with killing intent. To actually force his friend into such a state, he had never seen the sloppy Rongyu Tianlan in such a miserable state. He had actually used the reincarnation array to perish together. If he and Shuema had arrived a little later, he was afraid that this friend of his would never be able to see him again. After all, Shinjiuli and Rongyue Tianlan had been friends for thousands of years. Although their martial arts were not equal, they were true friends who had gone through life and death together. Even blood brothers could not compare to them. Shinjiuli was high and mighty. There were countless people who worshipped him, but there were very few who could be called friends. There had only been one or two in thousands of years. Now, someone had actually forced his only friend into such a state. Although Shinjioli had always been calm, he was furious at this moment. Chapter 3107. Did they really think that Shinjioli was dead? He didn't come to this continent often, but that didn't mean that he didn't care about this continent. He glanced at the great array in the square below, as well as the Purple Cloud sect disciples who were wandering around in a daze because they were no longer bound. He had a general understanding of what was going on. He raised his hand and a zither appeared in his hand. His voice was cold. Two high-level immortals who have lived for tens of thousands of years actually joined forces to deal with a high immortal who has lived for thousands of years. Don't you feel ashamed? Huang Luqing and the Purple Cloud sect masters' expressions changed. They didn't expect the other party to see through their cultivation with a single glance. Huang Luqing said, "Who are you?" "The person who will send you on your way." Shinjioli's cold words decided the fate of these two people. Thus, a great battle began. Ji Xinyue was only afraid that she would block Rongyue Tianlan's escape route. She didn't listen to his orders to return to Carefree Island. She had already made up her mind. If she saw Rongyue Tianlan escape, then nothing would happen. She would completely listen to him and find a way to escape to Carefree Island and patiently wait for his return. If he encountered an accident, then she would immediately accompany him on the road to the Yellow Springs. The zither sounded. The blood demon shield broke. Rongyue Tianlan flew out. Shinjioli and his wife appeared. All of this happened in an instant. When Ji Xinyue saw Rongyue Tianlan fly out and fall onto the clouds, she was stunned. When she found that he was motionless on the clouds, she immediately rushed up. At this moment, she only had him in her eyes. When she fell onto the clouds, her legs were weak. Rongyue Tianlan's face was pale. He lay there motionless. Even his chest didn't rise or fall. Tianlan. She knelt on one leg beside him. She held his wrist and immediately felt his pulse. As she felt his pulse, her hands and feet turned cold. Rongyue Tianlan's heart had stopped beating. He was already dead. How could this be? Besides a bloody wound on his palm, there were no other wounds on his body. Ji Xinyue's fingers trembled. She didn't give up and checked his neck. She laid on his chest to listen to his heartbeat. "You are Ji Xinyu." A clear voice rang out beside her ear. Ji Xinyu raised her head, just in time to see the red-clothed woman floating on top of the cloud. Ji Xinyu could already tell that these two people were friends and not enemies. Furthermore, their skills were extremely high. They were quite similar to the great god couple that Rongyue Tianlan had mentioned to her in the Tian-Ci continent. She nodded her head carelessly. "I am, you, sister, look at him, see if he can be saved. He's not breathing, his heart isn't beating." The lady in red was naturally Ning Xuemo. Her gaze swept across Rongyue Tianlan and then landed on Ji Xinyu. She sighed softly. He is indeed dead. In fact, she didn't need to look to know that Rongyue Tianlan was dead. He used his heart's blood and soul to open the reincarnation array. Once the array was opened, the person who set it up had to use up his heart's blood. When the blood was used up, the human body's functions would automatically stop. How could he not die? In fact, Rongyue Tianlan was already dead the moment he flew out. The reason why he could still move was that his soul was supporting him. Ji Xinyu's vision turned black. Her body swayed and she sat down with a plop. Her fingers grabbed Rongyue Tianlan's cold hand tightly, as if she could hold him back. At this moment, her mind was blank. She couldn't think. She stared at Ning Xuemo, then he You are great gods. You should be able to save him, right? Chapter 3108. Ning Xuema looked at Rong Yu Tianlan's face again and sighed, let's wait for the great god to finish the fight. He should be able to save. Although she was also a doctor, she did not practice the art of resurrection. If she was still alive, she could save him, but if he was already dead, there was nothing she could do. But her great god should have a way. Even if his soul was scattered, he could gather and resurrect, let alone someone like Rong Yu Tianlan who was just a dead body. He should be able to save him. Ji Xinyu's face was pale, and her heart was in her throat. Ning Xuema stepped forward and poked Rong Yu Tianlan a few times. Ji Xinyu's eyes widened, what are you doing? Sealing his soul, locking his 7 orifices, maybe this body can still be used. Ning Xuema replied, come, Xinyu, do me a favor. Pick him up and turn his back to me. She called Xinyu intimately, as if they were friends who had known each other for a long time. Ji Xinyu had no time to think about how the woman in front of her knew her name. She immediately and carefully picked up Rong Yu Tianlan's body and turned his back to Ning Xuema. You, be gentle. Ning Xuema smiled, of course, I never hit hard. She poked a few more times on Rong Yu Tianlan's back. Ji Xinyu checked Rong Yu Tianlan's situation and found that it was the same as before, but the blood in his palm had stopped. However, probably because he had lost all his blood, the blood in his palm was already in a semi-coagulated state. The amount of blood oozing out was very small, and now it was completely dry. She did not know whether this meant good or bad. She looked at Ning Xuema again, waiting for her next move. Ning Xuema finished all this and stopped. Her gaze turned to a place where the fight was in full swing. The great god was indeed a great god. He was probably afraid of the flowers and grass around the big battle, so he directly set up a barrier, covering the 2 people inside, and then opened his hands. This great battle started very quickly, and it didn't end very slowly either. Huang Luqing had always regretted that he had never met a real opponent, but this time, he finally met one. In order to avenge Xie, he had already risked his life, but under Shinjuli's powerful move, he was still suppressed and had almost no chance to counterattack. He and Sect Master Ziyun were originally invincible. But with Shinjuli, they had kicked a real iron plate. And white robe fluttering in the great god's white clothes, from start to finish, he was expressionless, and did not show any mercy. They had forced his friends into such a state. How could he let them live when Rong Yu Tianlan chose to perish together with them? Huang Luqing was the first to be hit. A string directly pierced through his heart meridian. When he slowly fell to the ground, his face was not filled with unwillingness, but relief. Everyone had an obsession, and his obsession was Xie. He was a rare black shark man. Black shark men did not differentiate between men and women before they reached adulthood. Only when they reached a certain age would they transform into men and women according to their personality and hobbies. Usually, they would transform into men and women according to the gender of their sweetheart. If their sweetheart was a man, the black shark men would transform into a woman. The black shark men only loved one person in his life, and Huang Luqing only loved Xie in his life. Unfortunately, Xie was a romantic devil lord. The women around him formed a formation, and they were all playthings in his eyes. Huang Luqing did not want to be one of them. He felt that rather than being his bed-warming woman, he might as well be his right-hand man and live a long life. Chapter 3109. Huang Luqing did not want to be one of them. He felt that instead of being a bed-warming woman, he might as well be his right-hand man and could last for a long time. Therefore, he became a man and became Xie military advisor. Xie was a cold person by nature. He was cold and heartless to everyone, but he looked at Huang Luqing differently. He often lamented why Huang Luqing was not a woman. Otherwise, the two of them could have been closer. Huang Luqing naturally could not become a woman again, but he was sincere to Xie. At that time, the two of them had a sweet time. They slept together like friends and lovers. After being drunk for a day, Xie was in the mood. He actually wanted to drag him to bed and make him his boy toy. He even said that he loved him, that he was gay, and that he could disregard the fact that he was a man and make him a concubine. It was because of Xie's actions that Huang Luqing, who had always been obedient to him, became angry. Huang Luqing left in anger and returned to the heavenly mirror sea. After his anger subsided, he heard that Xie had mobilized the demon army to search for him. In the end, he had attracted the pursuit of the immortal world and was completely annihilated. In order to revive him, Huang Luqing had been running around for tens of thousands of years and finally allowed him to awaken and become Xie again. However, this Xie did not remember everything that had happened between them. He only remembered that he was his military advisor. That was all. He was unwilling to accept this. He wanted Xie to remember everything. Then, he would ask him if what he said about loving him was true. However, he would never be able to ask. Xie was completely dead this time and would never come back. Naturally, he would not be able to answer his question. Tens of thousands of years of obsession had been exchanged for nothing in the end. His feelings were actually a joke, but he was unable to extricate himself from it. Ask the world, what is love? It makes people live and die for it. His love might be deformed, but he had indeed loved and tried his best. Now was the time to truly be free. When Shinjuli's Guqin strings pierced through his heart meridian, Shinjuli's intention was to kill him. Shinjuli had not done anything to him, but Shinjuli was one step ahead of Shinjuli. The moment Shinjuli fell to the ground, Shinjuli struck his own head with his palm. Bang! With a muffled thud, his entire body instantly turned into dust, and even his soul turned into thousands of streams of light that scattered in all directions. This was somewhat out of Shinjuli's expectations. This was the first time he had seen his own soul dispersing. He frowned slightly and seemed to have understood something. He was originally the most heartless person in the world, but after marrying Ning Xuema, he started to value the relationships in this world. He looked at sect master Zi Yun, and if he remembered correctly, this person should be Ji Xinyue's master. He used to treat Ji Xinyue quite well, and their relationship was even closer than that of a father and daughter. This person used to be an exalted immortal, but for some unknown reason, he became a devil and was willing to serve the devil world. Shinjuli didn't have much malice towards the devil realm. His own wife was the greatest devil master. Immortals and devils were separated by a single thought. If devils didn't do evil, then it wasn't necessary to get rid of them. However, what Grandmaster Zi Yun and the others had done was undoubtedly extremely evil. They had almost caused the deaths of so many people. Although Shinjuli didn't know the exact details of the matter, he could roughly guess the situation in front of him. Seeing that this person had once been an immortal and had done so many good deeds for so many years, Shinjuli decided to give him a chance to explain himself. Zi Yun, you were born as an immortal. Why did you do evil? Chapter 31:10. Sect Master Zi Yun panted for a moment, then smiled sadly. He raised his head and sighed. Since it's already a fact, why bother to investigate the root cause? His gaze turned to Ji Xinyu, who was outside the barrier. Ji Xinyu was holding Rongyu Tianlan in her arms. Her face was pale as she stared at him in a daze. Her gaze was extremely complicated. He looked away and took out a sparkling jade token from his storage space. Help me give this token to Xinyu. From today onwards, she is the sect master of Ziyun sect. It's better if you don't. At this point, he smiled again. Forget it, Shinyu can say whatever she wants. Since I've already failed, as a subordinate, I should die for my master. He raised his palm, and a purple light flashed in his palm. In front of Ji Shinyu's wide eyes, he slammed his palm down on his own chest, in an ice room. The ice room was decorated in a quaint manner. A table, a chair, a vase, and a tea table were all arranged appropriately. There was even a painting hanging on the wall of the ice room. The painting was of a misty landscape, as if it could be integrated into the ice room. It fully displayed the master's taste. This ice room was where Rongyu Tianlan usually meditated. There was originally a meditation cushion on the ground. Now the meditation cushion was gone, and in its place was a cold jade bed. There was a person lying quietly on the cold jade bed. He had long black hair, a handsome and refined appearance, and a smile on his lips even when he wasn't smiling. It was Rongyu Tianlan. At this moment, his eyes were slightly closed as he lay there motionless. Ji Shinyu sat in front of the bed, holding his hand, as if she would never let go in this lifetime. Tianlan, when will you wake up? You've already slept for half a month. Tianlan, your godly friend said that this is the best place for you to recover. As long as you lie here quietly for a while, you'll be able to come back to life. I'll wait for you to come back to life. I'll wait for you to come and marry me, Tianlan, my master is dead. Before he died, he gave me the token that represented the identity of the sect master. This token actually chooses its master. Only when the previous sect master approves of it will this token become the sect master's token. By the way, my senior brothers and junior nephews, as well as other immortals who came to the Purple Cloud sect, were also rescued by your friend. The Purple Cloud sect has returned to normal. I didn't tell my senior brothers about my master. I only said that my master and the blood-sucking demon perished together. I didn't want my master to bear the infamy before he died. You won't blame me, right? Tianlan. So your friend is the mysterious man who saved me back then. You didn't expect this, did you? I was also very surprised. Perhaps this is fate. She held his hand and told him the rest of the story. Rongyu Tianlan didn't react at all. He was like a sleeping beauty. Ji Shinyu didn't care. Rongyu Tianlan had been like this for the past half a month. Shinjioli once told her that if she wanted Rongyu Tianlan to wake up, she still needed to call him. If she talked to Rongyu Tianlan more, she would be able to call him back sooner, so for the past half a month, Ji Shinyu had been staying in this ice room, rooted in front of this bed, holding one of his hands and talking to him. Ji Shinyu wasn't a talkative person usually, but for the past half a month, she almost didn't stop talking. She kept talking and talking. She also kept holding his hand, as if she would hold it until the end of time. In the end, as she spoke, tears fell from her eyes. Her tears fell onto his palm. Rongyu Tianlan, when are you going to wake up? Perhaps it was because she had been holding him tightly, but she didn't notice that his palm gradually became warm and his fingertips moved slightly. Until now, she had finally finished writing the main plot of the second chapter. So sleepy. Sob sob. There were still some small plots to be explained. There were probably 3 or 4 chapters after that, so she wasn't very sure. But it definitely wouldn't last long. I'll go to sleep first. Chapter 31:11. On the beach of Carefree Island. Ning Xuema and Shinjioli were strolling hand in hand. The sea breeze brushed against their faces, as if it were blowing away all the shadows in their hearts. I never thought that Rongyu would actually build a Carefree Island here. It's similar to the Carefree Island of the Heaven Gift continent. It's hard to imagine just how he found it. What's even stranger is that the spiritual energy on these two islands is so rich. Ning Xuema couldn't help but sigh as she looked at the similar scenery. All the aftermath work had been finished. She could finally take a good look around this island. Every continent has a spiritual energy spring, but not everyone can see this spring and find a way to stimulate it. Thus, the vast majority of people are unable to discover this spring. Rong Yuejun has the eye of heaven, thus he was able to easily discover this spring and use it to build his residence. When he came here, he probably didn't plan to live here for long, so he was too lazy to think about building a new style and simply copied the one on the other side. Sometimes he's also very lazy. Shen Jiuli explained to her. Ning Xuema couldn't help but laugh. You don't understand him at all. Shen Jiuli placed a hand on her shoulder. What? Are you jealous? He and I have been friends for thousands of years. Ning Xuema glared at him. Do you think I'm a jealous lover? I'd be jealous of anyone. Shen Jiuli smiled. I hope you're jealous more often. Didn't you say that being jealous is good for your health? The two of them teased each other for a while. Then, Ning Xuema suddenly thought of something. That's right, great divinity, I know that Rong Yuejun's chamber has the richest spiritual energy and is also the most suitable for him to meditate in. But, will it be easy for him to recover in his current condition? After all, his soul hasn't truly returned to its original position. It's different from meditating. That ice jade bed is so cold, I'm really worried that he'll freeze into an ice corpse. Shen Jiuli lazily smiled. That ice room is indeed beneficial to his body's recovery, but it will also cause his soul to be unable to return to its original position. It will be stuck in his body, unable to leave or rise. Ning Xuema. Why? Shen Jiuli said leisurely, this brat left such a big mess to me and then went to sleep without worry. Since that's the case, I might as well let him sleep for a few more days. Ning Xuema was speechless. The Almighty was too two-faced. But this time, the mess that the great divinity had dealt with for Rongyue Tianlan wasn't small at all. After dealing with those two people, he had also used his zither skills to unravel the bewitched minds of the Purple Cloud sect disciples. He had even personally escorted Rongyue Tianlan and Ji Xinyue back to Carefree Island, working tirelessly for 3 days to revive Rongyue Tianlan. If it were an ordinary person, as long as the body was still intact, it would be a piece of cake for Shinjiuli to resurrect the other party. However, Rongyu Tianlan was not an ordinary person. He was an immortal. It was not easy for him to cultivate. If it was simply to resurrect him, he would have to abandon his original body and use his soul to reforge a new body. But in that case, Rongyu Tianlan's original strength would be consumed by 80 to 90%. He wouldn't be able to maintain the immortal lattice of an immortal and would directly fall to the level of a divine lord. So after Shinjiuli examined Rongyu Tianlan's body, he found that his original body could still be used. It was just that he needed to use a special method to treat it. This method was very time-consuming and also consumed a lot of willpower. After Shinjiuli finished treating him, he was in a bad mood. This brat didn't cause any trouble, but once he did, he caused such a big problem. If he didn't teach him a lesson, how could he be worthy of himself? Chapter 31:12. Ning Xuema could roughly guess what Shinjiuli was thinking and could not help but laugh. The great god and Rongyu Tianlan were indeed the best of friends. They could risk their lives for each other at critical moments, but they liked to hurt each other when they were together. Great God, when do you think Rong Yuejun will wake up? Shinjiuli tapped the jade flute on his palm. According to the conditions of the ice room and his recovery speed, he should sleep for a month, but I estimate that he will wake up soon. Ning Xuema raised her eyebrows. Why do you say that? Shinjiuli lightly said, his soul is trapped in his body, so he can hear Ji Shinyu's words. That girl has been constantly saying sad things in his ear, so he must be very anxious. If he is anxious, he will recover faster and want to completely wake up to comfort his woman, so this was the great god's intention. The great god was so two-faced. But she also liked it. She hugged one of Shinjuli's arms and leaned her head on his body, sighing with satisfaction. Great God, now that Rongyuejun has also obtained his happiness, he might immediately ask Shinyu for her hand in marriage after he wakes up. We might even be able to drink his wedding wine. Shinjuli ruffled her hair and said, I don't think we need him to drink. We should leave now that we have succeeded. Ning Xuema was surprised. You won't wait for Rongyuejun to wake up before leaving. After all, you two haven't seen each other for such a long time. You should have a good chat, right? There's no need to wait. He will definitely wake up in 2 days. The first thing he will do when he wakes up may not be to see me. Ning Xuema was startled and finally understood. She could not help but laugh. Of course, the first thing he will do when he wakes up will be to confess his feelings to Shinyu. While that little girl is full of gratitude towards him, his first task will be to completely settle the marriage. He probably thinks that we are third wheels here. Shinjioli had been with her for a long time and could understand her modern language. He could not help but smile. That's right, he will definitely choose his lover over his friends. We don't want to be third wheels here. Let's go now. Before he could finish his sentence, a clear voice rang out from the coconut forest behind him, who said that I value women over friends. Supreme Divinity, the first thing I did when I woke up was to look for you. Ning Xuema turned her head and saw Rong Yuetian walking out from the coconut grove with Ji Shinyue by his side. He seemed to be in a good mood. Although his face was still slightly pale, he was glowing. Unexpectedly, he was 2 days earlier than Shinjioli had predicted. It seemed like Ji Shinyu's nagging by his bedside had stimulated the full potential of his soul's recovery. The power of love is indeed great. Shinjioli raised an eyebrow and glanced at him lightly. You actually didn't put a girl before a friend. Rongyu Tianlan's smile was flirtatious. Friendship and love do not conflict. Besides, Shinyu is not that kind of person who haggles over every ounce. Supreme Divinity, you came at the right time that day. It's really better to come at the right time than to come early. If you came a moment later, you wouldn't have been able to see me. Ning Xuema sighed. It's not a coincidence. The great god predicted that you would be in trouble, so he rushed over in advance. Rongyu Tianlan knocked his head with his fan. That's right, I forgot that Supreme Divinity's divination skills are top-notch. Shinjioli's voice was faint. It's not top-notch now. I predicted that you would have a great tribulation 2 days later, but your tribulation came 2 days earlier. Chapter 31:13. There was still a small mistake, and this was because his martial arts had not fully recovered. Rongjui Shinlan smiled. In any case, it's not too late. I can't repay you for saving my life. How about I play a game of chess with you? Shinjioli, Ning Xuemo, there was a big tree that looked like a canopy, covered with fiery red maple leaves. A chess table was set up under the tree, and the black and white pieces were fighting fiercely on the chessboard. Shinjioli and Rongjui Shinlan sat opposite each other. Both of them had a cup of tea in their hands, and a few plates of exquisite pastries on the small table next to them. Once these two people started playing chess, they acted as if there was no one else around. Ning Xuema pulled Ji Shinyu aside to chat to pass the time. They chatted happily. Shinjioli was very satisfied with the chess game this time. Rangjui Shenlong had a wide range of hobbies and interests, and was easily attracted by some external things. So when he played chess with him, he would occasionally be distracted. If he did not play chess with full concentration, he would not be able to perform as well as he should. But this time, Rangjui Shenlong was really focused. After playing chess for half a day, he did not even look at his fiancée. After 3 games, Shinjiuli won 2 out of 3 games, and Rangjui Shenlong won 1 game. He rolled up his sleeves and said, again. Shinjiuli looked at Rong Yuejuan's pale face and slowly took a sip of tea. He put the teacup on the table and said, Rong Yuejun, what else do you want from me? Tell me now. Rangjui Shenlong raised his eyebrows, then smiled and sighed. Nothing can be hidden from you, Divine Lord. I do have 2 things to ask of you. Shinjiuli looked at him with a faint smile. 2 things. Rongyue Tianlong said sincerely, these 2 things are indeed very difficult for me, but in the hands of the Divine Lord, it's a piece of cake. Stop flattering. Be specific. Shinjiuli did not buy it. The 2 things that Rangjui Shenlong asked for were indeed a piece of cake for Shinjiuli. The first thing was to resurrect Ji Xinyu's 5th senior brother. The second thing was to gather a part of the sect master Ziyun's soul for reincarnation. Ji Xinyu, who was chatting with Ning Xuemo, froze when she heard the second thing Rangjui Shenlong said. She did not expect him to ask for this. She looked up at him, and warmth in her heart. She knew that he did it for her. The Grand Master Ziyun had raised her, taught her martial arts, and doted on her. To her, he was like a loving father. When he committed suicide, he even dispersed his own soul. At that time, Ji Xinyu could only watch helplessly as that scene unfolded, and her heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. In the past few days, she had been staying by Rangjui Shenlong's bedside. Occasionally, she would look at the sect master's token that her master left her and be sad. She did not know why her master became a demon, and in the end, was willing to be buried with the demon lord. Her master may have let down her senior brothers who were used, but he had always been lenient to her. If the Purple Cloud sect master had been a little more cruel to her, perhaps the final outcome would have been completely different. Her master had always loved her, but he could not go against the responsibility he had insisted on for tens of thousands of years. Sometimes she even thought that if her master could be reborn again, would he live a more relaxed life without so many burdens. Of course, this was only some of her private thoughts. She had never said it out loud, not even when talking to the sleeping Rangjui Shenlong. Chapter 31:14. However, she didn't expect that Rongyue Tianlong was like a roundworm in her stomach and had thought of everything for her. Shinjiuli drank the tea Rongyue Tianlong gave him and agreed. Rongyue Tianlong didn't expect Shinjiuli, who had always been difficult to talk to agree so readily. He was a little surprised for a moment. Are you curious why I agreed to save Ziyun? Xiao Xian is indeed a little puzzled. I originally prepared some words to chat with you. Rongyue Tianlong smiled bitterly and shook his head, causing the draft he had prepared in his stomach to be unable to be put to use. Ziyun has done a lot of good things on this continent. He didn't really do much this time, so he shouldn't die. He should be given a chance to be reborn. However, I will completely erase the memories of this life for him. When he is reborn, he will be a brand new person. After Shinjiuli settled these 2 matters, he left with Ning Xuemo. Before he left, he drank the most precious wine in Rongyue Tianlong's storage space. He would treat it as drinking their wedding wine. The cloud path was long. Shinjiuli and Ning Xuemo flew hand in hand through the vast sea of stars. On the way, Ning Xuemo asked Shinjiuli a question. Great God, I talked to Shinjiuli. She still hasn't recovered her memories of Ji Yu. Will she never recover them? Shinjioli nodded slightly. She will never remember. Jiyu is not the reincarnation of her soul, but the reincarnation of her obsession. When her obsession disappears, Jiyu will naturally cease to exist. Jiyu's memories will not return to Ji Xinyue. Actually, there's no need to be so calculative. Rongyue doesn't like her because she is Jiyu. Ning Xuemo nodded. That's true. Oh right, great God, after you gathered sect master Zi Yun's soul, did you see his memories of why he became a demon? I keep feeling that it's quite surprising that someone like him would be so loyal to Xie Juk. Shinjioli pondered for a moment and sighed softly. He became obsessed because of a relationship. Xie Juk was the orphan of a woman he loved deeply but failed to live up to. He promised that woman that he would protect her child for the rest of his life. Ning Xuemo stopped asking. Perhaps the story of Grandmaster Zi Yun was also a bloody one, but so what? It was a tragedy in the end. Now that the dead were gone, no matter what enmity they had, it was time to put an end to it. The journey back to the Tianxi continent was long. When they came here, Ning Xuemo didn't have time to appreciate the beautiful scenery along the way. Now that they were going back leisurely, Ning Xuemo wanted to take a stroll. Seeing a beautiful golden planet on the left, Ning Xuemo suggested that they take a stroll on that planet. Shinjioli naturally complied with her, and the two of them landed on the small planet. The small planet was not big, and it looked very beautiful from the sky. However, when they were on the surface, they realized that it was a desolate and lifeless planet without any signs of life. There were large golden rocks everywhere on the planet, and each of them shone like gold. However, they were not gold, but rocks. When Ning Xuemo landed, she pulled Shinjioli to take a look around excitedly. However, after walking for 2 hours, she felt a little tired. No matter how beautiful the scenery was, it would be visually tiring if it was always the same. Ning Xuemo and Shinjioli sat down on a large rock and sighed. This planet is really good-looking but useless. Whoever lands on this planet and can't get out will be miserable. There isn't even a snake, insect, rat, or ant. Chapter 31:15. Shinjioli held her in his arms. He looked at her pale face and asked, "Are you tired?" Ning Xuemo leaned her body against his chest. Great God, we've already helped 2 couples. According to the heavenly law stone, there should be a 3rd couple. I wonder who the 3rd couple is. Shinjioli was not worried about this. We'll know when we see the heavenly stone. It will definitely give us a hint. Ning Xuemo nodded. That's true. She simply laid down on his thighs and analyzed the situation with him on a whim. Great God, did you notice that the couples we helped were all previously acquainted? Will the 3rd couple be someone we know too? Who could it be? Shinjioli played with a strand of her hair with his finger and said casually, "Who do you want it to be?" Ning Xuemo paused and glanced at him. I already said that you're not allowed to be jealous. Shinjioli was silent for a moment. You want to help Shuilan. The guru was indeed the guru. He was so considerate. Ning Xuemo hugged his arm. Guru, you understand. There's nothing between Shuilan and I, but he was my friend and helped me a lot. I still hope that he can be happy, Shinjioli thought for a moment and suddenly smiled. Actually, I also hope that he can be happy. He could only be relieved if that guy had someone else in his heart. Ning Xuemo's eyes lit up. Really? Of course. Shinjioli's expression was sincere. He pulled her up and said, All right, we've rested enough. It's time for us to look for the 3rd pair of missions. After completing the 3rd pair, we can return to the mythical continent. Ning Xuema immediately thought of her son when he mentioned the mythical continent. She felt like a cat was scratching her heart. Okay, let's go now. She got up too quickly and tripped over something. Luckily, Shinjiuli was holding her and helped her stand up. What tripped her up? Ning Xuema wanted to look back, but Shinjiuli had already held her hand and flew up. I'll take you away. Ning Xuema threw the problem of tripping her to the back of her mind. It must have been a protruding rock or something. There was no need for her to look. It was more important to hurry. She and Shinjiuli flew into the sky and disappeared into the distance in an instant. She didn't realize that the thing that tripped her wasn't a big rock, but a small corner of the crystal. The crystal seemed to have been buried deep underground. Later, after being exposed to the sun and wind on this planet, the Earth's crust moved and rose a lot. Now, a sharp corner was exposed on the ground. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't notice it. The volume of this crystal seemed to be very large. Only a small part of it was exposed from the ground. Even though it tripped Ning Xuema, the Devil Master, it still remained motionless. After Shinjiuli flew away from the planet, he looked back and frowned slightly. Ning Xuema didn't see the thing that tripped her because she was thinking about something, but he saw it clearly. It was a crystal coffin. He gathered Shui Lan's soul and remolded it. After that, he sealed him in a crystal coffin and threw it on a green planet full of vitality. He let it wait for the fated person to open it. But he didn't know why this crystal coffin appeared here and was almost seen by Ning Xuema. Shinjiuli put a curse on the crystal coffin. The first person to open the coffin and save him would be the fated person after his rebirth. If Ning Xuema saw it and opened the coffin to save him, wouldn't they be entangled again? Chapter 31:16. So close. So close. There was no one on this planet, not to mention people. Where could they find someone to open this coffin? If no one opened it, wouldn't Shui Lan sleep until the end of time? Moreover, this planet was on the way between the Tianxi continent and the Fanyin continent. What if one day Ning Xuema came alone and rested on this planet? He paused in the air and told Ning Xuema, "Wait for me for a moment." Then, Ning Xuema was surprised to find that Shinjiuli began to cast a spell in the air. A colorful light was emitted from his palm and directly hit the small golden planet they had just left. Ning Xuema didn't know what he was going to do, but she didn't want to disturb him. She stood aside and watched with interest. Then, she was surprised to find that the inconspicuous golden planet that couldn't be any smaller had left its original orbit like a meteor, flying into the distance. Ning Xuema was confused. "Guru, what are you doing? This small planet didn't offend the Guru, did it? What was the meaning of kicking him away?" "It tripped you," Shinjiuli answered casually. Ning Xuema was speechless. Shinjiuli looked at her expression carefully. "Are you not touched?" Ning Xuema hugged his arm and made a very touched expression. "I am touched." Tears are falling. Why did she feel that things were not so simple? She raised her head and looked at the planet that was flying away. Suddenly, her eyes widened. There was a black whirlpool in front of the planet. A black hole. The black hole that had sucked her into it. The planet fell directly into the whirlpool and disappeared in an instant. Ning Xuema was speechless. She knew that the small planet would never come back. She remembered that on the other side of the whirlpool was the place where she used to live, Earth. This small planet wouldn't fly over and collide with Earth, right? On second thought, it shouldn't be. On the other side of the vortex was an extremely vast starry sky. Who knew how many planets there were? Earth was just a drop in the ocean there. How could it be so easy to bump into it? Thinking of this, she felt relieved. When Shinjioli saw the planet flying into the black vortex, he couldn't help but rub his eyebrows. He didn't expect the black vortex to appear at this time. He had cast a spell on this small planet. Once it entered the atmosphere of other planets, it would automatically burn up. However, the crystal coffin wouldn't. It would still be fine. He originally wanted to throw the crystal coffin to a rich continent far away, creating an opportunity for Shuilan, but he didn't expect, now, even if he wanted to get that small planet back, it was impossible. Rongyue Tianlan's future was completely up to fate. Hopefully, he did not fall into the prehistoric civilization. Yellow sand was everywhere. This was a famous desert on Earth. It was a place of adventure for explorers, and also a place of death. A woman was driving a car in the vast Gobi Desert. Music was playing in the car. She was humming along with the music. Suddenly, a bright light flashed in the sky in front of her. It went straight across the sky and then fell, bang. There was a loud noise. Endless smoke and dust rose. The earth also shook a few times like an earthquake. The woman's car was obviously flipped over by the huge shock wave. Her ears were almost deafened. It was buzzing. After all the dust settled, the woman raised her head from the car and found that there was a big pit not far in front of her, meteorite. She actually witnessed the fall of a meteorite with her own eyes. The woman's eyes were shining with excitement. She pushed open the door and jumped out of the car. She ran towards the big pit. She wanted to see the meteorite with her own eyes and take a few photos. Soon, she ran to the edge of the meteorite pit and finally saw the meteorite. Then, she was stunned there. What was lying in the big pit didn't look like a meteorite. It looked like a coffin, a crystal coffin. What was even more strange was that there was a beauty lying in the coffin. Chapter 31:17. The person on the bed showed no signs of waking up. Ji Xinyue stared blankly at the sleeping face of the person on the bed, feeling as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. For her. Everything he did was for her sake. But she had always been wary of him, unwilling to completely open her heart to him. "I'm sorry." She held the hand of the person on the bed and pressed her small face against his palm. "Rongyue, can you wake up? I'm scared. Scared that you won't wake up again, scared that you will abandon me, scared that you won't want me anymore. Rongyue, as long as you wake up, I will marry you immediately." She murmured. The palm under her face suddenly moved slightly. The movement was subtle, but it was sensed by her sensitive senses. Ji Xinyue's body stiffened, as if she was dreaming. She didn't dare to move, holding her breath to sense him. His fingers moved again, but this time, the movement was much larger. Ji Xinyue's heart felt as if it had been struck by a large hammer. She slowly raised her head, her eyelashes trembling as she looked at him. His eyes were still closed, and even his chest couldn't be seen rising and falling. Ji Xinyue's heart, which had just been raised by surprise, suddenly fell back down. She was indeed hysterical, or perhaps she was too eager for him to wake up, so, Rongyue, Rongyue. Even though she knew that he wouldn't hear her, she still wanted to call out his name. For the past 1,000 years, this name had been a sore point for her. Whenever it was mentioned, she would panic, so she didn't want to mention it at all. But now, when she said this name, her heart felt sweet and sour, as if it was being warmed. She couldn't help but lie on his chest, and then she heard his heartbeat. Her whole body stiffened, and she leaned her ear against his chest to listen carefully. "Calling me husband, why are you still calling me by my full name at this time?" A low and clear voice suddenly sounded from the top of her head. Ji Xinyue suddenly raised her head, but before she could see his face clearly, her wrist was grabbed by someone, and then her body flew into the air, by the time she regained her senses, she was already lying on the bed with a burning hot body covering her body. She opened her eyes wide and looked at him, who was half supporting her body, but still holding her under his body. She was surprised at first. "You're awake." Then she blushed. "Don't press on me." With her current strength, she could easily push him away, but she didn't have the heart to do so, nor did she dare. She was afraid that she would accidentally knock him out. Rong Yuetian narrowed her eyes and looked at the person below. His handsome face was very close to her, and his warm breath blew on her face, making her heart beat like thunder in an instant. He ignored her request and directly said, "Call me husband." His voice was extremely hoarse. "Ji Xinyue," he laughed again, "I heard everything. Xinyu, you said that you would marry me once I woke up." Ji Xinyu glared at him, "So you woke up a long time ago." But he deliberately knocked her unconscious to deceive her. "Actually, I can hear everything you said, but I can't wake up." Rong Yuetian whispered in her ear, "So, don't even think about reneging on your debt." His scorching aura was too strong, causing Ji Xinyue's ears to turn red. She stuttered, "No, I won't go back on my word." "You can leave first." Rong Yuetian smiled slightly. "All right." She lowered her head and kissed him fiercely. This kiss was so hot that it was suffocating. After a while, Ji Xinyue's body went soft and she wanted to push him away. His body was burning hot, and their bodies were so close to each other that she could easily sense some indescribable changes in his body. He did not hide his body's true desire, and even rubbed against her. His eyes were as deep as a whirlpool, and there were flames dancing in the center of the whirlpool. His gaze also did not hide his desire for her. "Xinyu, I want you." His voice was hoarse. "No, no, you just woke up, and your body is still weak, you can't." Rong Yuetian smiled, but there was an indescribable danger in his smile. "Whether my body is weak or not, you will only know after you try it." His body was not weak, on the contrary, it was extremely good. The reason why he could not wake up was because Shinjioli had done something to him. In fact, he was suffocating. Now he urgently needed to vent his anger. Ji Xinyue had other concerns. "No, your friends are still here, they might come in later. Don't worry, they won't come now." Rong Yuetian hugged her tightly and pecked her little earlobe. "Focus, feel me carefully this time." He did not want to be treated like a small brothel by her again. This time, both of them were awake and deeply in love with each other, and the love at this time was the real ecstasy. Reality proved that this man was not weak. 2 hours later, Ji Xinyue deeply understood this point, and it was incomparably deep. I added a little bit of Rong Yuechu's story when she woke up. Just treat it as a little candy. I hope everyone will like it. Mwah. Chapter 31:18. Shinjioli, Xuemo, you don't seem happy. Ning Xuemo, our story is about to come to an end. I'm a little reluctant. Shinjioli hugged her waist. No matter what story it is, there's always an end. As long as you and I are together forever, that's all. Ning Xuemo, but we haven't had many intimate scenes yet. Shinjioli was speechless. You and I don't need other people to watch our love. Ning Xuemo, but Shuailan. Shinjioli immediately tensed up, but his expression remained calm. What's wrong with him? Ning Xuemo, we don't know if he's dead or alive, Shinjioli pondered. You want Mumu to add scenes for him? Ning Xuemo sighed. I just want to know if he's living well. Shinjioli pondered for a long time. After a while, he nodded. It's not easy for him. We should add scenes for him and let him have a good home. Ning Xuemo hugged his waist, touched. Guru, you're so nice. You think so too. Shinjioli smiled and stroked her hair. Of course, Xuemo, I don't want you to have any regrets. He didn't want to leave any hidden dangers for himself. That guy would stop thinking about his Shuemo when he found his true love. However, that guy had been kicked into outer space by him. Even if he wanted to help him, he couldn't find his shadow. Guru, I don't know who the third couple we're going to help is. I hope it's someone we know. Ning Shuemo's eyes were full of yearning. The feeling of helping others be the matchmaker was actually quite good. Especially when she saw her friends find good homes one by one, the sense of accomplishment was even more overwhelming. Guru, do you think the third couple we're going to help is Shuailan? Ning Shuemo suddenly had an idea. Shinjioli's body stiffened. Please don't let it be him. Otherwise, wouldn't he and Shuemo also have to enter that black vortex? He calmly pulled her into his arms and changed the topic. Do you miss him? Ning Shuemo replied without hesitation. Of course. She thought of her son even in her dreams. They had left him on that continent at such a young age. She didn't know how he was doing. Was he being bullied? Then let's return to the Tian-Ci continent to find the Heavenly Tao Stone and see what the third pair of missions are. Okay. By the time he returned to Carefree Island on the Heaven Gift continent, it was already a month later. Returning to this place Shuailan to this place was a place, as here was his T, as was his S this was Rong Yu Tianlan's territory, his home that he had painstakingly managed for thousands of years. But now, he had returned to his homeland, the Sanskrit continent. There, he had found his sweetheart. He was destined to take root there and never return. She and the guru would only use this place as a temporary residence. They would return to the divine demon continent and wouldn't stay here for long. In the future, this place was destined to become the territory of other cultivators. Here, they would experience other people's emotions. What are you thinking about? Shinjioli held her hand and strolled on the snow-white beach. I'm thinking about who will be the next fated person on this island. Money is just a worldly possession. You don't bring it with you when you're born, and you don't bring it with you when you die. What's the point of thinking about these things? As long as you and I are together, what does the vicissitudes of life have to do with us? Yes, the guru was right. As long as she was with him forever, those worldly possessions weren't worth mentioning. No, she was still thinking about someone else. Ning Shuemo's face was brimming with smiles as she hugged his arm. Great God, let's go. We'll go find the Heavenly Law Stone and ask for the third mission. After we finish the third mission, we can go home. Shinjioli didn't move. Ning Shuemo tugged at him a few times, but he didn't budge. She raised her eyebrows and looked at him in surprise. Maybe we don't have to do the third mission, Shinjioli said slowly. Half a year has passed, and I haven't shrunk. Ning Shuemo was stunned. She counted with her fingers. It had indeed been half a year since Shinjioli shrunk. Logically speaking, Shinjioli should have shrunk a month ago. What's going on? Did the Heavenly Tao change its mind? We don't have to do the third mission. No, no one can discount the Heavenly Tao. The Heavenly Tao Stone suddenly emerged from the ground and appeared in front of the two of them proudly. Since it can't be discounted, we've only completed 2 missions. Why, no, you've already completed 3 missions. You've already fulfilled the third mission. The Heavenly Tao Stone's words shocked everyone. Ning Shuemo, she couldn't help but ask, who is the third pair? The Heavenly Tao Stone kept them guessing at the critical moment. The heavenly secret is not to be revealed. Ning Shuemo had the urge to kick it away. Shinjioli's heart skipped a beat. Could the third pair be Shuailan? Could it be that his kick had coincidentally sent him to the fated person's side? He smiled and held Ning Shuemo's slender waist. Shuemo, you don't have to care about the third pair. Now that the mission is completed, we should return to the Celestial Devil continent. Myanmar is still waiting for us. This little story was considered as an explanation for the last pair. Unintentionally planted a willow and the willow grew a shade. The great god's unintentional kick helped a pair of fated people. Ha ha ha. It's the end. If you still have the monthly ticket, can you give it to Mumu? Mwah. Mumu has no idea about the new book for the time being. Everyone can follow Mumu's Weibo and QQ public account. Mumu will announce some of the latest trends in these places, such as the theme of the new book. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.